Welcome back, everybody, to Scaled Success Reptile Podcast. We are live, episode 38. Getting really close to the end of the year. Thanksgiving is this week, so hopefully everybody can spend it with their families, and have somewhere to enjoy the, Thanksgiving, the holidays that are coming up. Again, thank you for stopping by tonight. And tonight we have Boss Hawgs, Scott, as guest. Actually got some animals from him, and our lavender project actually started from one of the animals that we got from him. So really cool to have him finally get on here, and a little bit update on what's going on in Clover's Reptiles world. Brumation is full effect, so you guys might hear the brumation fridge right next to me might kick on during the live, so hopefully it's not too loud. But like I said, brumation is full effect. We have a couple animals that we needed to feed up a few more to be able to breed next year, especially males. So they're going into brumation in another week or so. So that's what's going on. We still have plenty of babies from 2024 left, and a handful of stuff from 2023. Mostly males as usual. There's some males, but if you guys are looking for a specific coral, Arctic conda coral, Arctic Mai Tai, sable stuff, or even the double heads, we definitely have plenty of males that can help you guys out with that. So hit us up that are ready to go for next season. They're not information, but they're ready to go. So you guys can set them up information for the next season. And what else we got going on here? Next weekend, we are going to be in Repticon Orlando, vending out there. So if you guys are in the area looking for some last minute Christmas gifts, I'll make sure to stop by our table. So we're doing vending there with For Real 3D with Paul and also Emilio Villarino Reptiles. So like I said, make sure to stop by, say hi, see what we got going on. And then after that, it's basically, chilling out for the rest of the year in December, hanging out with the family, getting stuff done. Getting deep cleanings. I already did the deep cleaning of the adults that are in brumation, and possibly we might have some coming down the line. We might be moving this room into a bigger area. So still trying to work out the logistics and all that stuff. So that might be coming up real soon, and we'll keep you guys updated. And we're gonna, document it so you guys can see the process on what we did, and hopefully if there's anybody out there that has converted a garage, because we're probably going to our garage into a reptile room, give us some advice. We'll see. Let us know how things are going. See if there's any tips or anything that you wish you would have added to your reptile room when you converted your garage. Let me know. I'm open for ideas. And what else we got going on? I think that's pretty much it. We are running a Black Friday Christmas sale, and so right now everything's 20% off on our Morph Market and free shipping on every animal, and that sale goes through December 17th 18th, which is the last day of shipping for the year. So make sure you guys go check out the Morph Market. The link is in the description below, and don't miss out on a great deal. And if you're looking, like I said, if you're looking for some last minute gifts, for yourself or your loved ones, go check it out, because we got some good deals and free shipping to wherever in the US. All right, guys. Before we bring on our guests, let's say what's up to a couple of people that we have here. Mitigate, first time seeing you here. Thanks for joining in. Make sure you guys subscribe, like, and comment down below. Creative. Oh, I'm gonna butcher that, but thank you for joining in. Like I said, first time seeing you here as well, so pretty sure here to support Scott. Or if not, if you just found our channel, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and comment down below. Guys, if you guys have a specific question about hognose, brumation, breeding, or any other species that Scott keeps, or myself, drop a super chat. Let us know what your question is, and we'll see how things are going. Both of Reptiles, big shout out to him, man. Always supporting everybody in the hobby. Big hug and support to your family right now. I know his wife is going through a battle right now with her health, but we're always in our thoughts. Positive energy over to you guys. Casey Golf Reptiles Creations, thanks for joining us. One of our YouTube subscriber members to the channel. Thanks for being a longtime member here, Casey. Morph Valley Reptile, what's going on, brother? Thanks for joining. And let's see who else we got going on here. So the better half of Morph Valley Reptiles, Nikki, how's it going? Thanks for joining. Heather Bruner, I'm pretty sure I responded to one of your comments recently that you left on one of our videos. Thanks for checking out our channel. And if you're still looking for a hog nose, message us on Instagram or check our Morph Market out and let us know. And we have here, because of Scott, hognose are on the list for 2025. I think hognose need to be on the list for everybody for 2025. So that's good to hear. So thank you again, guys. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Go follow us on our social media. And if you guys have any specific questions about hognose, any of the species we keep, make sure to drop a super chat and support us here and the channel. And without further ado, we're going to bring on Scott. Welcome to Scaled Success Reptile Podcast, Scott.
Hey, what's up?
How things going, man?
Pretty good. Nice and busy and hectic, with the holidays and everything.
Oh, for sure, man. I totally get that. I just, we were talking about backstage. I just ran into the house, doing stuff for the holidays with the kids and stuff. So, and before we get further in, I did almost forget to give a shout out to our sponsors, which is Sea Serpents. If you guys are looking for a quality incubator or PVC rack, make sure to hit up Chris, Sea Serpents. You can find him at a lot of the NRBCs, Daytona, and the Super Shows. And actually, there's another show too in Pennsylvania that he goes to. Hit him up if you guys want to pre-order, and he also ships nationwide. So big thank you for the support that he has given us through the year. And all of the racks that we have are from Sea Serpent, so we can't recommend them more. And the customer service is great. Husbandry Pro. If you guys want to take your record keeping to the next level, you guys want to be able to dial down on little thing that's going on with your collection, feedings, formation, make sure to try out Husbandry Pro. Use Clover 60 to try out for a 60-day trial. And as usual, US Arc National. If you guys are supporters of the reptile hobby, they are here to help you keep your privileges to be a responsible reptile keeper, as well as US Arc Florida is another chapter of US Arc, and you need to go get a membership for them as well, because they are the spearhead against fighting any major legislations against reptiles or other exotic animals. And usually when stuff happens in Florida, it trickles down to other states. So make sure you guys go support that and get a membership to both. So Scott,
yes,
let's get into this, man. As I was telling in the intro, man, my base lavender project came from mail that I got from you.
That was my
and
first Daytona. I came down there and I was lucky enough to have, you looking for that snake, so I could make a sale while going down there and hanging out.
Yeah, man. So that was our first Daytona too. So that's pretty cool to have that in common there. And that was an Arctic lavender. I don't remember if it was 66 head albino or 100%, but he proved out to be head albino.
It was Paz head. It proved out.
Yeah.
From like the same year, I sold Kevin Rhodes a male lavender Paz head albino, and that proved out. And the other Paz head albino, maybe it was a Conda that I held back that year, proved out for head albino. So I have like really good luck for proving out Paz head coral males. Nice. It seems. I got a couple really more this year.
That's really cool, man. And with that, like, he's thrown, this is the second year breeding, great breeder. produces some great lavender. So I really appreciate you, putting that work in to producing those lavenders and stuff.
I'm glad
So
to see it work out because
yeah, man.
it's funny that even though those were some nice snakes, when you look back after especially our breeding and selling snakes for a few years, you're like, every year you're like, oh man, I didn't know what I was doing. And then you learn more and more and more. And then you're like, look back and you're like, oh, I really didn't know what I was doing. So, when you do this, it's nice to hear that like those animals you produce in the first few years, like, achieve, did what you hoped they would do. The person bought them, bred them, made some nice animals, and felt, like I always want a win-win deal when
Yeah.
it comes to selling these things.
No, for sure. And that's a big thing too, like seeing updates of animals you produce to, especially to breeders or even first time aspiring breeders, and to
Yeah.
be able to your animals be able to be that cornerstone for a project. It's really cool to
And even
see.
pet owners,
Hmm.
just having that oversight where you come in contact with like a large portion of people that are actually buying the snakes. Because if you don't ever see them or hear from them, you don't know if things are working out or not, or if they needed help or whatever.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. I always tell everybody that gets a hog nose from us either at a show or through online. Send us updates. If you have any questions, hit us up. We're here to help. Because you can have the best intentions, try to be the best breeder there is. At the end of the day, we're working with animals, we're working with nature. Things don't always go 100% the right way, right? Either finicky eater or, just something that you couldn't see eternally, like a overgrown heart, or some kind of organ that you just couldn't, what you
Yeah.
call predict, right? So, like I said, thanks again for producing those animals, and he's going to be a long time breeder here for as long as he's able to produce some animals.
Yeah, man, the lavenders are hard to let go because I hold back a couple, even just regular ones every year because I'm like, this one's probably gonna be pretty purple. I want to keep that one. And then
Yeah,
they have the older ones. I'm like, yeah, but this one's cool too.
yeah,
I
man.
don't, that's, I got the problem where I could have a ton, can't have enough of those.
For sure. So give us a quick background of you know where you started with, especially hognose, and why hognose.
Okay. So this is what I would probably call like my third like iteration of keeping reptiles. One portion when I was like 12, 13, had a whole
Hmm.
bunch of stuff, and other like kind of moments when I was like in high school or like a young adult. And then the third one, was about 30, 37 now. So it's about hit 30. And I was telling you in the, earlier that I was coming across Instagram and saw like a picture of a super Arctic hognose. And since I had kind of had a couple of them when I was like 19, 20, I immediately knew, I knew about them. I knew they were cool. But then you
Hmm.
start seeing these morphs. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is so interesting how the hobby continued moving forward, even though I wasn't like participating it for, large portions of my life. So I just kind of like got, gave me the itch again. You kind of can't stop thinking about it, especially the super Arctics. That was really it because it's um, someone else said this was actually Jermaine, Shovel Nose Hogs.
Yep.
He
Yeah.
he said super Arctic is the coolest snake morph I've ever seen.
Hmm.
Not just morph in a species, but it's like it is, and there aren't really any other species that have something that's like super Arctic.
Yeah.
So ever since he said that, I thought that was pretty interesting, and I think I agree with it. There's something just so cool about this highly variable gene that is not really comparable to anything else.
Hmm. Yeah.
Oh,
And
so I'm sorry. You asked me about my background, so I'll
yeah,
finish that
yeah.
up. When you're gonna say, yeah, what were you gonna say though?
And with the super Arctic too, personally, especially for single gene, like single recessives in hognose, to with super Arctic on top of it, I haven't seen one that I didn't like. So
Yeah,
that's another real cool thing. Now, when you start adding, other combos, there's some that I would leave alone. I could take, or that archetype. But like every single like super Arctic albino, toffee belly, sable, they're all really cool animals.
Moonstones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The list go. I think any recessive super Arctic, I think, it's something that should be in someone's collection.
Yeah. So I saw that and I got hooked. And as a typical person with ADD, I kind of like lied to myself and said I'd only get into it like a little bit, and then you start. And I did. I I've made, I think, a lot of most of like the newbie mistakes, but I made them all
Mm-hmm.
pretty quickly because I had a lot of previous knowledge from keeping them before, and also just, I guess, was lucky enough to talk to some more experienced people that gave me good advice sooner than later. But I think the first couple ones, they were like, it was a non-feeder hognose and a non-feeder bull snake that I got off King Snake that the guy was just giving away for shipping. And for whatever reason, because I had kept stuff before, it's like, oh, I'll probably get a meeting if I just like set them up right or whatever. And actually, like at that time, I was like more into like building stuff, so I'd actually just I was working at a friend's like workshop, so I just made a little
Mm-hmm.
rack out of wood and got some tubs for it and sat in the living room. And I think just after like braining some pinkies and tease feeding them, like both just started eating, and now they're like two of my first and best breeders with both of those species, even though they're just like normals that are het albino. The female bull snake is proven to be het for two other things too. I just breed different things to her every year and see what she's het for.
That's
Um,
cool.
so then I think I got some like couple snakes off Craigslist, because it seemed like a good idea, and like some guy that had like kind of like my age that had bred a couple pairs of hogs and had some babies and yearlings and holdbacks, and I got those from him pretty cheap. I thought I had, you know, was pretty smart, you know. And while they all ate and grew and everything, for whatever reason, a lot of them, like, they all slugged out, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them got like egg bound and stuff. And alongside that, like while I was raising those up, I had also bought like a trio of like some cheap Poshet hognose from Fathom Hogs. It was like my first interaction with John from Fathom,
Yeah.
and just over Instagram, and bugged him for some pictures, like what's like cheap random stuff that might be het for things, So I ended up getting those, and it was a good lesson though, because alongside at the same time these like sub adults and adults I got that I raised up were the same age as these hatchlings that I raised up. One of the hatchlings went at year 2 and gave me like 13 perfect eggs, and all the other ones like slugged out or like just didn't do anything. I eventually like just kind of sold them as pets and stuff. Um, and we got back down to where I just had these snakes I had bought from breeders as hatchlings that ended up just working out a lot better for me. And also somewhere within there, in that period of time, that first year of, became a lot more aware of the potential, just like how easy it is for colubrids to spread parasites, and
Mm-hmm.
the way that works with, how proper quarantining stuff, and how a lot of that is just prevented from buying stuff from the right people,
Yeah.
and limiting it, like just I don't think anyone's gonna have good luck if you buy like one snake from 10 different people,
Mm-hmm.
and quarantine them all, like put them all in the same room together. I mean, maybe you'll get lucky, but on it, like theoretically, I feel like you're adding a lot of variables and a lot of, foreign germs from other, people's, not just the snakes you got in from the collections those snakes came from.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
while that may not be true for a lot of people that have clean collections, a lot can be said about like the frequency of like new animals coming in and out of any type of building. I think is going to be, when you increase that frequency, you're increasing, the risk to stuff.
Correct. Correct.
And
Yeah.
so I just kind of tried chilling out and getting a lot more focused about, even if I didn't know what morphs I wanted to work with, it was like, okay, I need like, can I buy like, the next thing from Fathom Hogs was like, can I get like 8 females? Just 8 females, like normals, like, one that's het sable, het coral. I got really hooked up. So, and then some pos het sable, lavender, albino ones. They
Mm-hmm.
were like 50% het for all 3. And, one of them ended up proving out as the one that created the Arctic sable lavender, and then
Yeah.
next year, the super Arctic sable lavender. And that's the one that created the 2 super Arctic sable lavenders this year. She's just like, some snakes are like too good. They're too reliable. And then like, yeah, you'll have a whole other like group of ones in a rack that are like, this one isn't, this one's kind of too small. This one
Yeah.
kind of gives small clutches. This one, gives me a slug clutch every time, and it sometimes it feels like these animals are reliable when you have one like that. And then
Hmm.
you have other ones that are always just like throwing you curveballs. And now I just give up, like in a positive sense. I'm just like,
Yeah.
whatever happens, happens.
Mm.
I can try to optimize the stuff, but there's only, I think it has more to do with luck than me being good at it. You
Yeah,
know,
no, for sure, man. And what year was this when you started adding the hognose to your collections?
well, they were the first snakes getting back into this hobby. So
Okay.
that was like maybe late 2016 or 2017.
Hmm.
And then that next year is when I started buying enough stuff to sorry uh, enough stuff to fill up like one like reptile basics rack.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean,
So you have
so
like a
yeah,
yeah.
so you have already a good amount of years, at least working with the hognose. 2016, 2017. Um,
Yeah.
so you have some experience already. Especially now getting into already 2025, man. It's crazy how quick the year went by. But once you started getting that base um collection of hognose, and then you said you have bull snakes as well, what what was the driving factor of, all right, now I want to really breed these things, I want to start producing? And around what year was your first set of clutches?
Sorry, what was that very last part?
What year was your first set of clutches?
Oh, okay. 2019 was the first clutch. So
Okay.
I got some in late 16, early 17, and got one clutch. And then that was the hognose snakes. And then next year I got a few hognose snakes in my first bull snake clutch. And then it's kind of been like doing an even kind of exponential thing from that, where each year it's like kind of twice the amount until I realized that producing a couple 300 of these snakes is kind of more as many as I want to make or deal with on a weekly basis.
Yeah. That's such a great point. Trying to figure out that number that works out for you, right? That number could be totally different from you, myself, and you, and other
Yeah,
friends and stuff like that. I think realizing that earlier on is important because, I mean, right? We wish we can produce unlimited amount of hog nose, and and sell them, and because the more you produce, the cooler stuff you can produce, right? So
and
it's
offer
just
more variety to your
correct,
customers, because they're
correct.
always. Don't you notice how people are always, no matter how many extra steaks you put on the table, people are still asking you for something,
Yes.
and you're
Yeah.
like, oh well, maybe next year I'll make more of those. So you're
Yep.
almost like
Yeah.
you're making a lot more than easily sell just to make a handful more that sell easily.
Yep. Yeah, man. Like you said, last year I had a handful of corals, a good amount of lavenders. This year was slower on those projects. And you'll get. I produced one lavender female.
Mhm.
Daytona was
Yeah,
the
that's rough.
first. Yeah, that was Daytona was the first vending this year, and the first like hour of Daytona it sold. And then after the show, do you have lavender females? I was like, I wish. If I would have had 10 lavender females, I would have sold 10 lavender females at Daytona. Um, you know,
Oh, I could have probably done that at other even smaller shows.
yeah, yeah.
Just when people were looking for them and motivated to pay for them.
Hmm. Hmm. So yeah, so like that exponential growth over the years, it's important to realize like when you've reached your limit. So do you think this year? When did you figure out your limit?
I think probably this year.
Okay.
Last year I figured out how many theoretically I could, but I didn't hit it.
Hmm.
But there's just a lot of different. If you think of it in the interval, like the weekly interval of having to water, clean and water them and
Hmm.
feed them and get the portion of them out in the deli cups and take them to shows and put them back. Um, you factor in how much like bedding you can store for X amount of adults and this many hatchlings. And like it gets to a point, it's like, I don't like at some point, if you get more animals, you're going through like 10,000 deli cups a year. And that turns into like just needing a little closet to store all that stuff to like actually needing a storage space. So scaling this stuff, a lot of it's just trying to figure out how can I maximize the amount I like, can just have in a house, like a 2 basements and like a bedroom closet for some other
Yeah.
stuff, while keeping in line with the limits of like how much trash I can make every week, how much bedding I can fit in my house without it being like really stupid, and how much I want to load into my house at once because it's like not
Hmm.
easy to load stuff into my house. So there's a lot more factors than just like, and then there's the factor of like how many you feel like selling,
Yeah.
because it's like I could produce 1,000 snakes every year, but that's like so much more work, and honestly, it's not the type of work that I really like am looking trying. Like if I had that much more time and energy, I'd rather spend more time doing reptile things, not
Yeah.
sales stuff. But that's just me being idealistic about it. Like
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be aware of what I really want to spend my time doing.
Hmm. And another thing too, like you mentioned, quarantining and having a good process and stuff like that on how to bring in animals and keep your animals is as you grow, the amount of work that you create with that, especially with the babies, um, the more animals you're taking care of is the bigger risk factor as well, for cross
Yeah,
contamination, all that other stuff. And I think that's one of the biggest things, like trying to reach being overworked and then you're half doing your process or you skip steps because
yeah,
I need to get to this animal. I need to make sure that water's changed. I need to make sure I spot clean. I need to make sure I'm feeding and I'm running through things. So and I think that is about as well, trying to like keep your system but still grow at the same time.
yeah. And if you're not growing it, like refining it, I guess that's like the
Hmm.
next step for me is trying to find, kind of retire older breeders or sell them as pets or sell
Hmm.
adults to replace them with basically like their kids that have a bunch more genes
Yeah.
but can do the same thing their parents did. And I never thought I'd really have to do it so soon, but it's like something's got to give. You got to like pick one thing to compromise on. And if I want to keep every snake, then I can't keep any of the new ones. And a lot of the new ones are like not only just the best ones because I hit things, but with the time and experience I've gotten doing this, I've started using more like just more outcrossed, unrelated animals from separate people in a way more like intentional way. Instead of being stuck with a certain amount of snakes where I can only like do like certain pairings, I can, I'm making more outcross like genetically healthy ones than ever. And that's like, well, I mean, man, those are the ones I probably want to keep some of those to replace some of the old ones that aren't as like, outcrossed. So it's really hard. I mean, that's like I feel like every breeder's got that problem on one level or another.
Yeah.
You got to decide like, do you want to, how badly do you want to keep everything, or, do you want to not be kind of sentimental, or just, just sell what people want, when there's that hottest snake in the clutch, you post a picture and someone's like, I want that one. And you're like, dude, that's like the only one I want. It's the one that's like, I'm going to spend no effort selling, you
Yeah.
know, and yeah, I know I can sell like 6 months from now. And it's like, you sell that one, and then it's like every other one in the clutch. You're like, for some reason, there's no interest in it, because it's not that one. And so
Hmm.
there's that push and pull where, yeah, you obviously can't keep everyone, but uh, I think a huge part of this for a lot of people and me is that the whole point of all the discipline you go through of getting all these nice animals from quality sources and quarantining and having healthy animals is because people like us don't just buy like random cheap snakes, at sitting on flipper tables and at snake shows, or people getting out of the business and buying their whole collections, because we don't want to take that risk. So it's like, man,
Hmm.
the only way I get new snakes in this, colony is if they hatch here out of ones that I've invested in. And it's like, I feel like that's, keep the best perk of this whole thing is being able to keep those like nicest ones in the clutch, because it's like, man, this was the only way I could get this.
Yep. Yeah.
Because even if I bought it from someone else, first I got to pay the money, and two, you got to quarantine it and everything. And just, I don't know if I'm wrong or right, but I've at least made the decision that I'm really only going to buy from like a couple or, two, three, four people, or if I do like batch buying at a time. And I'm not like, I don't think people have to be that strict. That's just like the gamble I'm going
Yeah.
with. So that's a
Yeah.
certain amount like I'm comfortable with, and just buying all those snakes from that person all at once. You
Yeah.
know, like
Well,
not
when you already have success from a set of people that you're buying from, why change was broken? What
yeah,
is
yeah,
not broken, right? What's working for you?
yeah. You have
Um,
rapport. You have like a history with
correct.
them, and
Correct, man. Yeah, and if you're getting healthy animals that not just healthy animals too, but for us breeders is after, for a female, after 2.5, 3 years that you've grown her and you're getting good animals that are breeders and stuff like that, then why go and take a chance somewhere else?
yeah, yeah.
And we're talking about that, I would say, I always tell people that are in the hognose world, in the breeding world, there's maybe a top five that's actually producing, year over year stuff that you want in your collection, stuff that's, cutting edge, especially compared to like we'll say ball pythons, where maybe that top tier is a little bigger because of the quantity of animals.
And
But
quantity of morphs.
correct. Yeah, man. So I think there's very, we probably buy from the exact same people, and
Yeah, yeah,
as a newer breeder and a smaller breeder, I hate to say that because I want people to buy animals from me. I want people to
yeah.
buy animals from you and people that are coming in and have that same a work ethic, that have that same priority of keeping animals healthy and stuff like that. But you got to start somewhere, right? And then you got to have a process. So talking about the process, what's your quarantine process when you get animals from another breeder?
So I've got a separate quarantine room, which ended up being it was the first like the walk-in closet in my room that was like my first snake room years ago. So this is funny because it seems like every all of your last rack and your last space and your last where you had your animals end up being like your first new room, like your quarantine room or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much exactly what it is. It's like the old setup where I kind of have like a couple racks in there. There'll be racks that I try to keep in there, and if I have to use them for anything else over time, I use a steam cleaner to just like that and like peroxide and F10 and just kind of
Hmm.
like cook it, totally cook it all out. And sometimes, depending, even the more intentional I get, like say if I'm gonna buy like 8 hatchlings from somebody, I might just buy like going back to the sea serpents racks. I use quite a few of those, and the V18 tub is pretty
Hmm.
interesting. It's very versatile because it's like
Hmm.
big and small at the same time. But you can buy like the eight one of those. That's a couple $100, and then like the 8 snakes I buy, just put them in that new rack. Like there you go, guys, whatever. Or
Yeah.
like or an old rack that like the first round of racks, the first couple of years I like hand built just because I think with a lot of stuff, you just want to see how annoying it is before you break down and like,
Yep.
buy the nice ones. You're like, okay, hey, you know what? I did that. It was kind of a pain in the ass. I'm just gonna buy them now. So like my old racks, and some like new ones I buy for that purpose, they'll just be quarantined in a closet with the same specs as everything in the basement. And I just interact with them minimally. I I'll try to like deal with them last, and try to space them out too. Like if I have multiple animals from multiple people, say they're all in 6-quart tubs or something because they're hatchlings, and it's like a stack a few feet tall. Put like three from the one breeder in the top, and like a couple from the
Hmm.
other breeder in the bottom, and
Hmm.
um, I guess there's a couple like little fine details to that. But when I'm saying it out loud, it just feels like pretty simple at this point.
Yeah.
It's not that
Because you already
extreme.
have the process, right? When it
Yes,
becomes a
yeah,
second nature thing to you. And same thing, like, and I'll give you an example of when I first started quarantine things. Once I had more than 3 animals, I was like, okay, and I dove deep into the breeding world and everything. I was like, okay, I have to quarantine. No matter where you're getting them from, I have to quarantine. So what I did, and I'm still using it to today, I bought one of those plastic like storage shelving from Walmart that has a plastic tubing and stuff like that. And what I did, I bought two, shortened down the tubings, and then stacked them on top of each other. Ran heat tape, and to this day, I every time I bring a new animal, I just go buy a new cheap like 6-quart Sterlite tub, or smaller if it's a hatchling, and I put it in there. And
So
for some,
it's like a temporary, a
yep,
disposable snake rack.
correct,
That's actually very smart because
correct,
utilizing cheap materials for the proper use. Like you don't want to make your nice, you don't want to cheap out on the nice version of stuff, but sometimes you need quick and dirty
correct,
versions of
correct.
things. It's
Yep.
like, yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, and that's cool because that's like I feel like that's like rack building 101. That's like the first video everyone sees on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, "Oh, all I got to do is buy a Home Depot shelf and
Yeah.
cut the tubes down." And then you do that, and you just realize it kind of sucks. As soon as you
Yeah.
like build a PVC one or buy one, you're like, "Oh wow, this is so much easier." And
Yeah.
now I'm at a point where I have like homemade racks where I have like one or two left and like two shelves stick. And I'm like, no, no, I'm giving this to somebody. We're using it for quarantine. I'm just gonna buy a new one because when it gets overwhelming, when you have when you have all the stuff, like all everything's hatching or trying to get everything established, or you're just trying to get through all the adults regularly, and because you're trying to feed them up and pair them and stuff, those shells that stick in the water that flies and all those other things start to really matter. And if it's not
Mm-hmm.
just time, it's just your sanity. Because
Mm-hmm.
and I think as much as you got to try to optimize things for the animal and like your business, like expenses and stuff, you should also optimize things for like not pissing you off.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
something just pisses you off all the time, that I think, at least for my personality, it's going to ruin it for me. And
Yeah.
if I notice any like details about things that are annoying me, it's like we need to fix this because this is making
Yeah.
me want to
Oh,
not do this.
I totally agree. If I had to deal with that rack daily basis, like I deal with it this inside this room, there's no way I would already change it to like a one of these sea serpent racks.
Yeah,
But it's
just smash in the driveway. Bye.
correct.
I'm done with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. But since it's such minimal exposure that I have to that, because it's like again, it's in a different room. Same thing. I work that a separate day or last if I'm feeding those animals. Cleaning is definitely a separate day. Um,
Yeah.
and then if for some reason my train of thought was also if there's something wrong with that animal, I can just throw out that tub, because it's its own latch tub, cover and stuff like that. I can just throw it out, and now you have to worry about sanitizing and using it for another
And
animal.
it's important to base that around cheap tubs. Like six
Yes,
quart tubs are really good. But
yes,
if you get some like those V18 tubs, even though it's
hmm
like I think one of my favorite like tub sizes, like
yeah,
measurement wise, they're expensive and hard to get. You have to like buy the case from Vision, and they're all weird and annoying about like the cost for shipping and
yeah,
everything.
yeah,
So and they're just not like. Then on the flip side is like the Container Store 6 quarts. You go to this website and it's like we've been making these for 1,000 years and we will continue to. They're 199 each. You get a case of them in a
yeah,
box this big, like whatever this big. It's like shipped to your door for like free shipping.
yep,
You're like, okay, those are the ones you make the disposable rack out of or
yep,
whatever.
hmm yeah,
And you
man.
do, yeah, just use the cheap stuff for disposable things.
I agree, yeah, man. And luckily, I haven't ran into any issues with any of the snakes I've brought in. But to me, I think, and it depends, right? Because like you stick to that list that you have that you buy from those people. Um, but then you also, one day they can switch up their process, and then it trickles down to you as well. So I think that's why it's always, even if you're getting animals from the same people over and over again, still it's important to quarantine because you never know what can happen. Even a small bacterial infection or anything that stuff that can, if you're picking up poop here and you're picking up poop here and they cross contamination, it's easy to deal with, to have that issue. Or mites, mites and
Yeah,
hognose is a nightmare. you know I've heard the stories that that people that have had mites and stuff like that, either ball pythons or hog nose and stuff like that, and there's no safe way or easy way, I would say, to deal with it you know
yeah. I've been I feel like at least I've been lucky that my paranoia has paid off to where I've been lucky to let other people learn these lessons for me. I get to
yes,
learn from their mistakes, and I just
yeah,
meet more and more people, and it seems to like it fits a very like interesting like repeatable pattern where someone says it costs them about $2,000 to get rid of mites one way or the other, because they're like I had to soak all my snakes for like a week straight. like something
Yeah.
you would never want to do to your animals,
Yeah.
and then buy all new racks and like put them in the new racks after you soak them, and like get rid
Hmm.
of the old racks. And like when you start adding it up like that, I can't stress enough. Don't think people point out enough how much damage it does to someone's business or potential business
Hmm.
when you get mites or some other disease that's super easily transmissible or whatever. And it's like, for as much as they that people don't there there isn't really much you can do to mess with someone's business. Like the
Yeah.
closest thing I guess would just be like shit talking,
Hmm.
or saying don't give that person business, it's no good, they're no good or whatever. But like giving someone mites is like 1,000 times worse,
Yeah. Yeah.
just because it's
You
gonna
have to
hook
shut
you
down
up.
your operation, yeah, until you deal
Yeah,
with it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
man.
really it's really bad. And even though it's a thing that can happen, it's also a thing that everyone that some people say it's not too big, they can happen, it's not a big a deal. But then the people that have dealt with them are like, they they act, they're not any less paranoid than me. They
Hmm.
you just revert to a point where you treat everything like it can have it,
Hmm.
and that really kind of prevents it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and for if you guys, anybody is watching that's newer, and just getting into hognose, one of the biggest things with hognose is that they're very susceptible to any chemicals. So like any of like the was it like mite prevention or mite spray that you'll use maybe on like ball
Yeah,
pythons or
let's
boas.
say like pesticides,
Correct.
those particular types of chemicals.
Hmm. They will cause either neurological issues or end up dying. The animal end up dying and stuff like that. So that's why for hognose keepers and maybe for other colubrids as well, it's very a very scary topic because we can't just go get a bottle of mite spray or any pesticides and spray them down, because you run the risk of any neurological issues and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know. I know. I can speak about one of them, like the hot shot, like the no test strips, like how some of these work. I think regardless of whether they hurt, hognose or whatever, like the no pest strips, they are just a straight up poison. And the reason it's like the dosage is bug sized. Like that strip is meant to like nuke
Hmm.
like a basement or a garage. They even say
Yeah.
like don't stay in the same room.
Yeah.
So they're proven that they can hurt people, like organisms as big as us. And how much more mass is if you're, you know, 150, 200 pounds or something compared to a 10-gram hog nose. It's about like that, dosage of the poison. The hog nose is almost like closer to the size of a bug,
Hmm.
on that scale than a human. So those things I know can be harmful. I've even used them in tiny amounts, like tiny bits preemptively, like thinking because to not catch them at shows and stuff. But I stopped using them once I had a friend tell me they were actually just, it's just a straight up poison. The effectiveness is based on the dosage of it.
Hmm.
And then I know, like, prevenamite can be really dangerous to
Yeah. Yeah.
them, but that's a different chemical. I don't know how that one works. And then the other stuff is like the salt-based ones. I believe like there's like natural types that, and
Yeah.
it
Like,
gets in a lot of fine print. Like
yeah.
that dries out and kills the adults, but it won't kill eggs. And another thing that seems very like low key, like low effort but effective is like spraying diatomaceous earth,
Hmm.
in just places where around your racks or whatever, or like in
Yeah.
the shelves and
Yeah.
even in like the bedding. There's a lot of stuff you could do, but it all has these like really like nuanced kind of like
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
And this is
That,
someone, luckily I haven't had them, so I
yeah.
don't, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but
Yeah. That
I've
and
talked to people that have had them.
yeah, exactly. And that or lathering your snake down on in oil, like cooking oil and stuff like that. So that I could just that's such a like, it works, right? But man, imagine the mess,
Oh
the
yeah.
to deal with that. It's crazy, and talking about quarantine, guys, if you have any questions about quarantine and that stuff, drop a super chat. But we did have a question, um, you know, from a within the reptile with the hognose world, permanent quarantine. What are your thoughts and um permanent quarantine, and then how do you get your quarantine animals into your collection if you don't do permanent quarantine?
Hold on, I'm getting a morph market inquiry. Um,
Those are always
uh,
good.
yeah, yeah. How do I feel about that? I think if you want to be like hyper, you know, protective about it, I think you can do that. Like, I don't think it's overkill. I don't personally do it because I can't really.
Hmm.
I only have so many reptile rooms, and the dimension that I kind of rely on the most with quarantine stuff is just time. If I have it just out of my main room for a year and I'm already putting it next to snakes that maybe came from the same person, like in the reptile room. And,
Hmm.
at one point, for one of these people I buy from, like, even though their collection changes over the years, like, if I'm putting 10 of their animals or five of their animals in a room that's already 80% of their animals, like, that doesn't seem as, risky. So I think it's cool. Like, it would be cool if I ever get some totally different living space.
Hmm.
I'd like to do that. And then there's, like you said, mentioned, like, how do you do if you can't take them out of permanent quarantine?
Or
And
if
I
you,
guess it would
yeah,
be
if you
like,
can't, yeah, if you can't, you're not able to do permanent quarantine. How do you move those animals from your temporary quarantine into your collection?
and I think that just depends on how, like, crazy you want to be about it. Like, you could, like, just dedicate one snake to that, animal and put it in the quarantine and leave it in there and always make that pairing. But that requires, like, a crazy level of intention, you know,
Hmm.
planning to continue to breed it, or maybe after a while, like, you bring it back in after a couple of years or something. But one way to think about it, or that I have thought about it, is if you're just kind of moving down a hallway that's a series of rooms, and every room is just the next year's baby, and it's almost like a fractal like shape, where you're just moving forward, and it's just a timeline of rooms, and it's like, well, here's next year's babies, and here's the next ones, and
Yeah.
maybe you jump back and breed to some stuff in the past, but you try to keep it. That's like just getting really theoretical about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And no, and look, I'm in the same boat as you as well, space restraints and then building the collection. Because I'm still just building my collection and the building blocks of stuff like that. If I permanent quarantine, then I will have to buy a lot of animals for one specific collection. Let's say, coral project. I'll have to buy a whole bunch of animals from the coral project, and they're only permanent quarantine here. And then I'll have to buy a whole bunch of animals for this other project and stuff like that. I think as you're building your collection, it's very, very hard. Now, once you maybe have hundreds of, or maybe even close to thousands of breeders, then yeah, maybe you can do that. You stick it in a room, you breed them there because you have enough animals to breed and outcross. You grab eggs and incubate it, and then you put those babies, either for sale or you put them into your permanent collection. But other than that, to me, it's almost virtually not doable as a growing collection, as exponentially as we were talking about growing year over year and being able to produce, 200-300 hog nose a year.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, there is a limit of what, depending on what type of breeder you decide to be, there's going to be
Hmm.
a limit realistically on how you can do things. And I think there's a good middle ground there to, like, where
Correct.
you can still be considered a good breeder doing the right stuff,
Hmm.
um, without um, having the same exact workflow in quarantine as people that have, like, thousands of animals. And the way I've thought about this, and the best way I can sum it up, is whether or not you're taking shortcuts or not. Because everything that is technically a shortcut kind of is the thing that always introduces some potential problem. And you almost, like, can't have a lot of these problems if you're not taking shortcuts.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. Yeah, man. And right again, if you have so many animals, eventually you gotta, you try to figure out a shortcut to be able to efficiently do everything time wise and stuff.
Oh, well, there's
Um,
optimizing. You can optimize something. Taking a
yes.
shortcut is like trying to skip a step. Like,
Yes.
I don't need to
Very true.
raise these hatchlings up. I'll just buy adults, you
Yeah.
know? And this is funny saying this too, because as someone that needs to sell a lot of adults, some of them will be like retired breeder pets, whatever. But
Yeah.
other people, it's like I want people to still. I think they'll still make good, breeders, and I don't think you should
Hmm.
never buy them. But if you're buying a hatchling and a yearling from someone, and they have an adult, and you can roll it all in one, then that kind of makes sense, and you
Hmm.
can be like, out of some of these snakes, something's going to do great for you, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to try to buy in a way that you can kind of that helps too when you kind of get more animals from the same person. They're
Hmm.
not they're really, even with the best intentions and people that totally know what they're doing, you're gonna get some that are effectively duds as breeders. They
Hmm.
don't they either don't breed great, or they don't um, lay nice clutches, or they just I've had a few females I bought from people who I've got amazing snakes from, and some of them, they just like, they're 2 or 3 years old, and don't even they don't look nearly that big,
Yeah.
even though they eat well, and it's just kind of whatever. And I'm like, well, okay, that's it's happened enough different times that I know it's just something that happens. And I've experienced with animals that I've held back. You hold back like 3 females for a project. And you're like, man, one of these like totally sucks. Like, it's
Yeah.
had for all this cool stuff. It's gonna be a terrible breeder. And like, am I really gonna like just sell this as a pet? Like, I guess
Yeah.
I am, because
Yeah.
that's just what happens. And then you think like, man, if I just sold this as a hatchling, I could have sold this for all this, good money, and it would have been unknowingly the other person's problem. Or they come back, and then you got to give them the other one that is,
Hmm.
bigger, because they're not satisfied. Who knows? You
Yeah.
know. So that's
But
another
but
thing
again,
too.
right? Like the so much variability in what we do is not knowing, and us that we're buying animals from other people as well, the breeders, is we're taking the chance just as much as our customers are taking the chance on buying an animal from us, especially to breed in the future.
Yeah, yeah,
Or or even just to keep a pet that's going to be have a long life, as long as they're correctly maintaining their husbandry and all that stuff. That's going to have a long life because it's a good healthy animal we produced, and stuff like that. So yeah, man, quarantine and sanitation and stuff like that is so important. You mentioned peroxide and stuff, where it's cryptosporidium. It's a big thing within not just hognose, what's it called, other colubrids too. um,
right.
so it's a big thing, and I think doing those cleanings and doing those quarantines is a must. I have animals that I bought in February, and this is it's funny because, like, just out of laziness, I haven't moved them into this room, but they've been in
Yeah, yeah.
quarantine since January,
And it's
which
just a bonus. You're like, oh,
is
I'm just chilling, and
yeah,
everything's like even better.
yeah, correct. So like those animals are still there. They're still getting maintained, fed, and everything like that. But
Yeah,
they've been
especially if
in.
they're eating well. Like, if they're just jumping out of the tubs every week, it's like, why do I? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Correct, correct. Yeah. So it's like it's doing great there. Why move it? Until probably until it's ready for brumation, or I'm gonna breed it, or whenever I decide it's ready. But generally, I try to use minimum of like 3 months on an animal. For quarantine, I think 3 months is pretty good amount of time where you're gonna see some issues with an animal, either feeding, just a bad feeder, or if you start seeing some weird, either regurgitation, diarrhea, or any of that stuff. 3 months is a pretty have an idea and see what's going on with an animal. But again, like I said, I've had some animals since February sitting in there, no problems at all. It's just
Yeah,
having, I don't see the benefit of bringing them in here. They're not ready to breed. They're not ready to go to brumation. And
it's
that
just
stuff.
extra credit.
Correct, correct. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I like to go 6 to 12 months, but that's
Hmm.
just because I can. There's no pressure for me, like, oh, I got to get these in this room because
Correct.
this, that,
Yeah.
and the other. There's just,
Hmm.
I'm not getting put. I don't need more room to make room in that room for anything at the time. So, I
Yeah.
just leave it be.
Yeah, because yeah, sometimes you got to play the shuffling game, right? Like, all right, I got to move this animal into this rack now to make room for whatever's coming from over there to here, all that
And
stuff
that's where
too as well.
the steam cleaner helps a lot,
Hmm.
because if you need like just to swap a rack over, you can just scorch the underside, where they like dig, and sometimes they get poop, on the roof. Just like the one I have has like a mop attachment, so you
Okay,
just
cool. Yeah.
slowly, and the mop attachment, because it traps the heat more than the one that just openly randomly sprays in the air.
Hmm.
It actually gets like way hotter because I'm taking the temp gun to it, so that gets like over 200 degrees, and you're just like just like sear the whole ceiling of it for, slowly, like an inch a
Yeah.
second or whatever. Just do it a whole bunch, spray peroxide in. And like if I do that in between reshuffles or whatever, I can feel like I have a pretty like sanitized,
I
rack.
like that idea, man. I have one that I did this year and I really like it. Like the Swiffer, the disposable Swiffers, for dust. How it has all those, like, it has the extendable arm and stuff like that. You
Yeah.
get so one day I'm just dusting the racks inside and stuff like that. I'm just like, man, this gets in pretty well with all the corners. So what I started doing this year, I just doused that Swiffer like mop thing in peroxide and get all the inside of the racks and stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
So I've done that with my bull snake racks
Yeah.
they're PVC racks, but they're like 4 feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
They're stupid. They're Christmas tree racks. It's like the
Yeah.
stupidest, silliest rack ever made. Oh, oh,
Timer.
yeah, right. That shout out to VivTech.
Nice.
Uh,
Guys, if you guys are
we're
watching,
back.
thanks for joining in. Make sure you guys subscribe and hit the like button. Comment down below. Drop a super chat, to ask any specific questions and stuff like that. So yeah, so you were saying the bull snake,
Swiffer
right?
sweeper.
Yeah.
Swiffer sweeper. I've done that on the roof because it's 4 feet deep, super deep, and you can, spray it. But also, I'm pretty sure if you get it the right microfiber, you can just like pinch it in the Swiffer thing, so you can put in the washing machine.
Yeah.
It's whatever, sanitize them for another use.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mess with that a little bit. It would be nice to have. I would love something. Can you see this right here? The I-10. This is the Reptile Basics in front of me that you can't see is the Sea Serpents version.
Yeah.
But this in here, like I trying to get in here and like clean stuff. I feel like I chew up my wrists.
Oh yeah,
So I'm
man.
like, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like, so I've got to a point where I like cut like wool like socks, like, and put them over the thumbs and put the glove on. So I have like a wool like gauntlet, to like kind of whatever. Like it just all sucks. Like none of it works.
Yeah.
The only solution I thought is something with super tiny hands can do it. That's about it.
Yeah. But and same thing. That's what I think the Swiffer came because, like you said, even like the V15 or the V35S racks, you start reaching in and all of this gets scraped up from the edge of the.
And here's a nice tip. Like I always take a little bit of like 220 grit, like fine sandpaper, and sand the edges and the face of this a little bit, so it's not so crummy. Because sometimes it's real crummy. It's like little like black, PVC pieces, and that's probably not good for our animals. But then also, if you just can get the edge off of this, it'll save you a lot of your wrist and forearm skin. Just trying to clean any rack because these things are sharp. Like especially the like the Reptile Basics that have that like kind of cleat that can't make the shape with my hands, but it's like it's a foot that drops into another hole. Yeah. And if you like, you can like pretty much gore yourself on that. Just like hit your elbow on it and cut it open. Those things are sharp, man. So I try to make it. I've got to, it's like Disney. You got to make it like all soft.
Yeah.
So you can hurt yourself.
The steamer thing is such a great idea. I'm definitely gonna have to see that from you.
It's the Dupre meat. It's like $150, and it's a whole thing. It comes with all this stuff, and it's cool. I really have a lot of shit to talk about bad products. So when I say something's good, you can believe it because it meets my standards. I broke it, and they like sent me a new one.
Oh, that's cool.
After like a year or two, and I got a whole new set of accessories to burn through, which is sick because those are sometimes harder to get. But yeah, the Dupre meat is pretty sweet, and it does all the stuff, and you can even like whatever detail your car and stuff with it. You'll find all these like it's like a light version of a power washer. So if you ever get have fun watching power wash videos, wait till you get a steam cleaner.
Yeah, man. And I think those little like tips and tricks that we can help each other with are such a cool thing. Now, let me ask you, have you had any issue with like bowing of the shelves and stuff like that with the high heat on the steam?
No, I think the stuff is so thick. The half-inch material is just way too thick for that to happen. I think if you left it cooking on there for like minutes, it'll like put like a white haze on the surface, like it'll cook it a little bit. But it doesn't really ever damage it. You don't have to worry about that. If you wear gloves, it'll cut down on you. Like you will burn your fingers with it. if you
Okay.
hit your hands. So,
Yeah.
but if a pair of nitrile gloves cuts down on that like a whole lot.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, it's pretty chill. It's just like a water kettle, basically. You put a
Yeah.
gallon of water in, it boils it, and it's like just ready to, the pressure from the steam just like, blows all the gunk and stuff off too. So it's pretty nice.
Nice. Nice, man. So, now we talked a little bit about quarantining, health and stuff like that. Let's get into some projects, some breedings information, with you. First of all, you had the world first of sable lavenders, right? Or Arctic sable lavenders.
There's Arctic sable lavender, and Dan
Okay.
Eby did the first sable lavender, and it might have been the same year, but he has an earlier
Gotcha.
season.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. How did that project come into like culmination of producing those?
So that was the second big purchase of snakes from Fathom. Was three possible triple het sable lavender albino females. One was a Conda, two were Arctics.
Hmm.
Um, and it was not even it wasn't very specific. It was still along the thing of like, I can't really, like, so to put this in reference, like my first male I bought was an Arctic albino, and that was like $1,500. He's a proven
That's
male,
crazy.
but that's
Yeah.
crazy, right?
Yeah.
So you can't just buy pairs of like lavenders and sable. Like sables were like 2 or 3 grand or something,
Hmm.
you know. And but the posets, I understood how they worked enough, and like having a species where people really want the normals and pet level ones is a perfect like reason to also mess with stuff like that, because you're not making, it's not like corn snakes or something where like you're gonna end up having to wholesale them for $10 to
Hmm.
someone because you just can't get rid of the fodder or whatever. But everything that didn't come out, out of these poset things were just like, oh, these are the pet snakes I was actually selling more of, at these local expos and stuff anyway. So it felt like that was a good way to kind of justify it, and they didn't really, they didn't cost a ton more. Um, and I just got lucky that one of them hit on all three. One of them hit het sable, one of them hit het albino, and those were cool, but they had kind of a limit of what they can produce.
Hmm.
Whereas the first clutch, it was like straight up like 16 eggs or something, and they started hatching out, and you're like, oh, let me back up a little bit. The next year, I didn't really know what have any vision for this. Like they hadn't made a sable lavender yet, and it just seemed like a combo that would look really cool, given what the two morphs are. And I was curious, and I saw these were pos het for those. And the next year, I went to Jonathan Fathom, and I got just like a double het male. I
Hmm.
was like, if you have something that I can pair these two, and I remember he gave me a double het coral male a couple of years ago, so I had that throughout the albino and lavender, and then I got this male, and at the time it was like more than someone will pay for a male double het now, which is pet price, but it wasn't expensive either. So I was like, yeah, this works. Paired the male in the one female that's really nice Arctic, got like set 16 eggs, which is the right odds for a double het to double het, and you start hatching out like lavenders. So I'm like, okay, it's het for that. And sables hatch out. I'm like, okay, she's het for that. Um, and then this weird little pink purpley thing that also had like some weight smeared stuff on it, like from the egg. It's just
Hmm.
like this ugly little thing. And that hatched out and became, just a male sable lavender, which is perfect. Um, and then from there, the next year, uh, got the super Arctic sable lavender um, repaired. So I know this isn't popular now, but really, even at the time, there wasn't 3, 4 years ago, there wasn't much public opinion on it. But I bred that male back to the mom,
Hmm.
and she made me another like 16 egg clutch. But along with that pairing and a lot of other pairings where it got to that like third or fourth year where I ended up having like basically like raining out unrelated males, to pair to other semi-related females that a lot of were like basically tons of het lavender clutches, and lavenders to hets. And I got to see like really like the good mix of everything that can go wrong with that gene. A lot of them like some, patched out perfect, and I've kept them and held them back, and they're good breeders now. But it was a really good like learning experience in what not, using less outcross pairings and like inbreeding and stuff can do. I feel like out of the ones that made the Super Arctic Sable Lavender, like half the snakes in there really were perfect. Like I got a
Mhm.
Super Arctic Coral out of there, and he's like bigger than every other snake in the clutch. He's like the biggest male I have, and his tail is like insanely long, and he looks perfect. And I think there is um, something going on with a lot of these. They do have a lot of small bad genes, almost in the same way like
Yeah.
polygenics work. It's a lot of cool different genes they'll pile on, and all of a sudden, hey, that's this type of line bred thing. And I think when all these bad genes start piling on, it starts kind of getting like worse and degrading. Like the more you do that, um, and some of them luck out and they don't get any of the bad genes. It's
Hmm.
like I almost think of it as having like say lavender as like a bunch of like like bad het genes. So it's like het for having like neurological issues or like I've got one or two that had like an underbite, and that even like I was reading Kevin Rhodes's book about that. Like he listed that as like you know uh
Possibility. Yeah.
possibility with that, and it wasn't the end of the world, but it made me. I reinvested a ton of money and time into trying to get like more unrelated stuff from people I trusted to outcross it to keep working with it, because what I have going for me is the color on a lot of them is good. Like I don't really have many lavenders that look really disappointing or not purple
Hmm.
or anything. They have,
Or
the ones
browned
that are
out or
nice.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, the ones that are
Yeah.
nice are really nice, and the ones that are healthy are
Mhm.
really healthy. So there's some good stuff in there too. So anyway, the Super Arctic Sable Lavender, she came out of that, and she's like, she's pretty much perfect. Um, she's nice and big and a monster, just like trying to eat my hands and everything. So I'm actually gonna try to pair her next year. And the snake I really want to pair her to is one I don't have, which would be like, well, really just like a permafrost.
Okay.
You know, like if
Yeah.
I had a permafrost, it'd be like boom, like
Yeah.
Arctic quad het, Arctic sable quad triple het, whatever.
Yeah.
Because as I think a lot of people are kind of just trying to you know, read through the muck and figure out which of these like triple visual and quad visual animals are to be worth, the time
Hmm.
and energy investment.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah.
the words I kind of use is like they should synergize, like 2 or 3 genes should look better than the sum of its parts, like if it's just a tiny little difference, then it might not, compete well with
Yeah.
3 other triple visuals that look similar.
Look, and I'm gonna give you my 2 cents on that. We don't need to put albino into everything.
A lot
Um,
of people are saying that. Yeah.
you know, storm cloud stuff. I didn't get any the year last year or the year before that because everything that I inquired was het albino or het this, and then you got to pay extra for for that gene, and I didn't want it in there. Yeah, you could
Yeah.
produce sunburst and it's versatile, but I didn't want it in there. So that's one thing, like one specific what's it called project I didn't want it in. So I made triple heads this year of stable Atlantic toffee bellies. So I was like, okay, I'll put in the gene that if I want a third gene in, I'll put in the gene that I really want into it.
And I made those, but I know even those could probably be het albino, because
Okay.
like one of them is the female is
Yeah.
pos het albino that made them. So for all I know, I'm going to be called, at least, for what matters to me at least is it's not intentional. Like
Yeah.
I know
Correct.
that I don't want it in there. If it comes in there, then it's like this sucks, but I was kind of half expecting it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not. I don't think it's the end of the world, but it's just we're in agreement. It's just like matter of fact. Like you don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's a thing that's kind of muddying up the project instead of enhancing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what are your thoughts about lavender visual breeding?
I tell people I don't have any plan to do it, and I tell people you shouldn't do it. And then I see some pairs that have it, they've paired them together and they have like perfectly healthy babies. So there's a difference between, I guess, having like a hard rule against something
Mm-hmm.
and just saying you don't do something because it doesn't happen rely on a reliable enough frequency to justify that approach.
Yeah. And I think about it too, but it's like, do you want to take the chance to prove that theory right or wrong, right? Like, And if
But it
you
might
put
be
it
the two snakes just are really good. You know, you have
correct,
two really good
yeah.
lavenders, and they're just perfect for each other.
Yeah, yeah. So like and like I said, I've thought about it, and I've seen people that are have bred lavender visual and stuff. But to me, like I said, I'm not having a plan. I had Rare Genetics here last podcast, and they talked about if eventually we talk about outcrossing and with genetic testing, then we should be eventually be able to do lavender visual. And I
By
guess
weeding out the bad genes,
correct,
testing for
yeah.
the bad genes, and
Mhm.
finding ones that don't have them.
Yeah, yeah. So, because right now we're flying blind is just by doing
Yeah.
the breeding and seeing if there's a bad outcome. Okay, you don't do it again, right? But to me, starting off, it's I can't take I don't have I can't take the chance right now to produce a batch of all neurological problem lavenders or
And,
whatever
and
I get.
here's I
You
have a good like kind of real advice to that's realistic about this too,
hmm
because the reason you're doing lavender is because you want more visual lavenders, right? You
Yes.
want those 12 eggs to be lavender instead of
Yeah.
6. But
hmm
what I noticed with even like some of the less health crossed visual to het ones is that um, you may still, you may get less lavenders anyway because those eggs don't hatch.
Yes.
You know, if you have like 3 or 4 eggs that don't hatch, it's like, say you do a visual and half of them don't hatch, you didn't get any more visual lavenders than the
hmm
visual to het, which is what you're trying to do anyway. And the ones you have
hmm
a like statistically like higher percentage of having more of those bad genes piled on because it's a
Yeah.
shallower gene pool. I have no data. I'm not, dude. I didn't go to college, but this is my reasoning I'm applying to it, and it seems
Yeah.
I like to use it, and then someone that's smarter than me tells me I'm wrong, and then I try to understand if I can wrap my head around how I'm oversimplifying it and proceed
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah, man. No, you know what? And I think experience trumps a lot of it. Because where I think we're getting this information is people that have tried it, people that have, have the years of breeding and have seen the outcomes already. And are staying away from it. Until we have that ease of just testing and being say, okay, no, don't breed this one, they're too closely related. Because that's one thing Rare Genetics is going to do. Next year for Dry Marcon, they're doing a identity test, so they could be able to see how closely these two are related to be able to pair them.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's helpful. I mean, I also think it's not so catastrophic
hmm
to when you do it the old school way, as long as you're not breeding
Yeah.
a ton of test breeding stuff. But even when you do, it's like if your commitment to the animals is the same and you take care of them, you have a high quality of care. It's entirely possible that that snake with like a little like lump in its spine or a kink that you sold as a pet in person to someone at a reptile
hmm
show that you see regularly might
hmm
have a better life than a genetically diverse one that's pumped out like in mass by someone like wholesale shipped and like split up and put on different tables, and then the kid that buys it isn't given enough, person isn't
Yeah.
given enough instruction to set it up. Like
Yep.
it's so there's like, yeah, I feel like one dimension level, your commitment to the animal is can be more important than the quality of it sometimes.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know if that's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah. And
but like,
even in
if you do good
project,
by them.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, even in projects that are outcrossed and stuff like that, you still have the chances of getting those kinks or those issues too. So
Yeah,
even they're still not 100% that you're not going to get
because it's
any.
not all genetic. Sometimes
Correct.
it's nutrition of the like mom,
hmm
or nutrition, whatever you want to describe, like the nutritional content of the egg, like the quality of the egg.
hmm
Some eggs just like suck, and I
hmm
think that's why sometimes you have a whole clutch that goes bad, because even if it did have a bullseye, it's just like, no, this egg like is just got the wrong mix in it,
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
that just sucks about it.
Yeah.
Like I had a really nice extreme red, like purple line outcross clutch, and I had one egg. I mean, the snake hatched out of an egg that was like a pea, and it's like missing its entire midsection. It's just
Yeah.
like this just super short, like little worm with a tiny
Mhm.
head, and it eats and stuff. And it's like I'm keeping it around. I'll like give it to somebody, but I'm not gonna like blame that on like genetics. I'm gonna blame it on like it came out of like the by far
Worst
like the
egg, yeah.
craziest looking like egg out of the whole clutch.
Yep. Yeah. And realistically, probably in the wild, that egg wouldn't have hatched, because
Yeah,
we're providing trying to provide at least a perfect environment for those eggs to thrive, the animal to thrive. So I think incubation is another possibility of either, kings or eggs going bad as well, right? Like if you have a spike and those eggs go into overdrive or just start cooking, could cause issues into the animal, even if they do hatch, right? So there's so many variabilities in that, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly unless you're breeding that pair over and over again, and you're getting the same solution. You know, what's it called, babies of issues. Then okay, then there's an issue with that pairing, right? Did we lose Scott? I think we lost Scott. Um, Scott, if you can hear me, you might need to close out your video and join back in. Um, Guys, if you have any questions, make sure to drop a super chat. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Let me message him so he knows what to do. Give me a second. Oh, there we go. All right, we got you back.
was that me?
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Well, it's
yeah.
weird. It just the app just crashed.
Oh, really? Yeah, you froze
Yeah.
and you came back in. That's
All
good.
right. Well,
I was
I'm
just
glad
gonna
it came
text you.
back. If I don't know if it happens again, goodbye everybody. I love all of you. Um, but it
Yeah.
is what it is. I said enough. What were we talking about? Bad eggs, bad nutrition.
Incubation could also be another issue with
Yeah, you're out of focus.
yeah, issue with like having kings or neurological problems too as well, especially high spikes of higher temperatures can be a problem.
And
um
I think I was going to say is that it's good that we make progress in the hobby where you like pinpoint this stuff.
yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's also pretty realistic to try to realize that's just like life and you have a lot of like crazy variables and stuff. And
Hmm.
as long as you're like kind of like your tensions and follow through are good, it's not, I don't think it's going to get too ugly for anyone unless you like literally have a problem. You're like an animal hoarder or something,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, for sure.
but that's different.
Yeah.
Um, I think, and like that's something I've wanted to say too, where like I know for 99% of my customers, I have a pretty good reputation, right? Like
Hmm.
whether I sold a pet or a breeder or whatever. But then I know, like, I've out of seriously, like, out of a few hundred snakes, I've probably sold at shows. I know, like, two of them did absolutely horribly and are like still alive, but like just not eating very great, even though they're
Hmm.
like over a year or two old. And people that I really didn't think did too great, were not really willing to listen to me. Had one that died after not eating for like a year. You know, um, and so it's like, man, even if you do a great job 99% of the time, there's going to be some instances where I mean, it just either looked like you dropped the ball or it didn't work out. And even if it
Yeah.
is your fault, it's like if you're selling hundreds of snakes and like, you sell the one to someone that ends up having like some chewed belly scales, or like it's got like some dry scales around the face from like
Hmm.
chiseling away at the air hole and you weren't paying attention, or something like that. Like it's entirely reasonable to make that mistake a few times and still like care about your animals.
For sure.
I think there's a very interesting gap in like, or spectrum of the level of what we deem unacceptable in this hobby. Whereas like a couple instances of that, someone might keep someone from buying a snake from a breeder, but then with the say if you with the same scale, if you were to weigh what you see at every reptile show with like a quarter of the vendors there that resell animals or flippers or importers, like well, how could you even have time to complain about the hobby people that had a couple animals with issues
Yeah.
when at least they're committed to keeping them. They're like, yeah, it's
Hmm.
like, wait, this happened at my house because it hasn't sold for a year, and I've just been cleaning it and feeding it, whatever, and whatever. The guy started pushing, and now it's got like a rub or whatever, and I don't know, man. This like the snake's kind of like had an issue or something. But we make it right till everyone's happy. But then you got to think about how many die, from flipper tables. Like it's almost like they're just sold like to get a sale,
Yeah.
and that
Yep.
thing's like not gonna get taken care of or hasn't eaten, or you know it might even just burn someone out of the hobby altogether because they're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I just bought one from some guy and it died. I'm never doing that again.
Yep, yep. Hey man, and doing shows this year, I did a lot more shows than I did last year. But doing shows over the last 2 years, I get a lot of that. I get like, oh man, I want a hog nose, but they're so difficult to get eating. They're so difficult. I had this issue with them and stuff like that. And it sucks to hear that, but it's sometimes you just gotta give them the info, or you give the people the right info and they decide. And I understand pricing sometimes is one of the biggest deciding factors of something. They go a different route because it's what they're able to do, and sometimes they just need to learn that life lesson, like cheap isn't always the best way. What I always tell people when before they walk away from our table, that I see there's some interest but the price not might be, I tell them I can work with something out. Or another thing I tell them is like, any animal you see on our table was hatched by us. We back it. If you have any issues, any of that stuff, we're here to help. So I think
And
that's the
I think
biggest
it's
thing.
it's just a matter of fact that it costs more money to do this ethically and to be actually behind, and more important, not just ethically, but be the person who produced the animals.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can just like find stuff at a low price to buy it and put it on a table for more and try to keep it alive till it's gone. But
Correct.
they didn't brumate them, they didn't raise them up from hatchlings.
Mm-hmm.
They bought that stuff from like a lot of them like desperate people that are like, oh, this is like hard and a lot of work. I don't want to sell this clutch of ball pythons or hognose or corn snakes or whatever.
Whatever it
I'll
is.
give to
Yeah.
this guy for $5-10 and they'll like live in a deli cup until they sell.
Mm-hmm.
Try not to feed them until and there's a lot of that stuff it shows. And at some point you got to be like, you can't like focus too much on, because like I can't just be getting in arguments with people at shows or just openly talking shit 24/7, even though it seems like I might. It's
Sounds
hard
like
to
you're
do
talking from
that.
experience, Scott.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, because the first couple of years vending, you feel like pride kind of that you're bringing something to the table with like the right intention, and you got like new stuff and you're proud of what you're doing and you
Yeah.
think you're doing things.
Oh, I think we lost him again. Hopefully we can get him back on without any issues. Um, you guys, let me text him, make sure he knows that we lost him. Give me 2 seconds. All right, there we go. Let's see. All right, let's see if he jumps back on. But yeah, talking about that, where it's if you're vending, and this is a big thing when you're vending, and you're going against the either a breeder maybe, or a flipper, or somebody that just has a wide variety of things. I always tell people, we specialize in Western Hognose. We back any animal that you're going to get from us. Whenever if any like feeding or that stuff arises, message us and we're here to help. I think that's a big thing. um yeah, he's gonna get back on. I just messaged him. Give me a second. Messaging him back. um while he figures that out. But yeah, getting that information, like as much information I can give to our customers. That's one of the biggest things why I use Husbandry Pro, is because I do track every feeding, and somebody might call me, crazy for tracking every feeding on a baby. Sheds when I can catch them and put them into the system. But the more information a person getting a hognose from us can get. Um, it just gives it a higher success rate of them being able to properly set the animal up, be able to, have a longevity with that snake with them. So I think that's a big part of breeding and being responsible of what you produce. Now, another thing too, I think he's back on. Um, Another thing too with being able to breed and having those animals that aren't 100% perfect, either some kinks or something like that, is there we go.
Okay, hey, I'm back.
All right, I
I think
got
my
you.
phone is so old it like just like crashed and I had
Kicks
to
you out.
re-download the app.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, welcome. I'm old. Welcome. Join me.
Yeah. Um, but back to the conversation, like with being responsible with the animals, you produce and being, having aftercare to a newer, especially a newer person that joins the hobby. I think sometimes, like you said, can make it or break it for somebody. Um,
Yeah,
and like you said, there could be the animal that just is a really bad eater that you had a customer, but the what
and it
makes
hated
it,
its new house.
yeah,
Like it was eating well, you got it started, but there's just something that didn't add up.
yeah,
And it's like, and then at some point, it's like you, if you expect it to work out all perfect every time, like maybe that's just not fair to expect that out of like life. Like
yeah,
it's not realistic. And even
yeah,
though like you can make it right, but it's also not a video game where like every transaction always adds up
yeah,
to like,
yeah,
working out.
yeah.
Um,
But what
so
makes the
it's
difference
tough.
is how you deal with that, how you
Yeah.
support and stuff like that, how you give the customer service and the animal. Either if like, hey, I'm gonna replace the animal from you, or I'm gonna give you your money back, or just or when you get to that point, or before that, it's just like, okay, here's what you can do to fix it, or let's see what's going on, try to troubleshoot it. And then
Yeah. And I think go ahead, not just if you sell all your own animals, like if you don't wholesale stuff
mhm,
and you produce like a reasonable amount for what you do, that makes it a lot easier to be successful with that, or keep track of that, so
yeah,
you can be kind of sure that the animals you're producing are going to decent homes, or at least are getting taken care of.
hmm, yeah, and then with like the with animals you produce and stuff like that. You said, how many did you say you produced this year so far?
uh After all like the dud eggs and ones that hatched out and everything, I think it was about 280 hognose. And
280.
we better talk about some bull snakes too, at least a
Okay,
little
yeah,
bit,
yeah, we'll
because I had
definitely
about
get.
about 100 bull snakes.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, see, I didn't know that you had that many bull snakes. Okay,
I mean,
see,
I've been breeding them almost as long, and even though you can't have, like, I have 20-ish adults, which is a lot for bull
hmm,
snakes. So you can't, it's almost like I have almost an equal size collection in bulls, but it's still less animals because they're bigger animals.
yeah,
They
yeah,
take up more room,
no, for sure, yeah, they definitely
like
get a lot
total.
bigger.
Yeah, like this room right here. This is now the baby room. I got everything in a baby room. The back room is the adult room, but this whole wall is bull snakes, and this whole wall is the hognose babies.
Nice, nice, yeah. No, and I think that's such a different dynamics of the size of animals change different, right? Like, I just got into what's called giant hognose.
Oh,
Um,
cool. Is
so
that Mad Hogs?
yeah, the Madagascar giants, yeah. So
Nice.
I know I'm gonna have eventually, and I'm gonna add more now that I have a pair. I really like
They're
them, so I'm
cool.
like, yeah, I'm gonna add more. So that's another thing too. Like, okay, eventually I'm gonna have 5, 6 feet, Madagascar giant hognose where I'm gonna need more space. It's gonna be probably end up the same situation, right? Like
And there's no
maybe
way on earth you would even want as many as hognose, like
no,
Western
no way.
hognose.
Yeah,
There's just like no reason to. Whereas with
correct.
the bull snakes, have like 7 or 8 morphs,
Hmm,
and you can combine them all pretty interestingly. And I have ingredients to kind of make every combo over time.
hmm,
So that's just the plan. I'm just like get going through every different male and pairing it with different females. So um, I don't have to like get new animals. Because not that I'm
hmm.
opposed to it, but that's one where like the bulls are definitely like done. Like I haven't bought a new bull snake in 4 years.
Okay.
And that's sweet to be able to do that. And it's not, I mean, I'm happy to pay for animals. I'd probably overpay for animals. I'm a great customer. I'm like, hi, I'd like to buy this full price, please. In your form of currency. However you want cash, you
Yeah.
want credit, like how you
Yeah.
want it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's not the problem. It's just like the commitment to like, is this the one I want to raise for 4 years and get babies from, and
Mhm.
in quarantine and go through all that. Um, and I got to consider that if I want to add any new blood. And I can get around that just by like waiting a couple extra generations to like make some hets or double or triple hets, and then get visuals out of that instead of like getting a new male for a different
Yeah.
project. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm with the hognose too. Like I theoretically, like I have to just like limit the projects, because theoretically I would love to have a lot more things, but I've almost like been hard no. Like I don't have any PPA because I have a ton of coral stuff and they look
Mhm.
really similar. Like I don't need to make two different snakes in very different ways that both look pink.
Yes.
And I also like I have plenty of little like pairs to make, super Arctic albinos and Bubs daddies and stuff. And I think they're awesome. I think they're still really cool.
Yeah.
Like that's a cheaper pink snake, than the
Correct.
than the
Yeah.
coral.
Yeah.
And even though lemon ghosts are cool, I don't have a single one because, like, dude, like, even if you're just doing lemon ghosts and maybe some like Woma thing or some other pattern thing, that's like a whole bunch of snakes and holdbacks and things that you're going to test breed and experiment
Mhm.
with, and then you start applying that to like every morph, like sable or like what else are people crossing lemon ghosts with, like sable,
Um.
toffee belly,
Yeah.
um, even
I've seen
red.
some. Yeah, I've seen some albino stuff in now too.
Yeah,
Um.
yeah. So you start adding that up, and that's not another like snake. That's
Yeah.
another several snakes and all their
Yeah.
babies that they're gonna make that you're gonna hold back.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, I'm not gonna get two lemon ghosts because I'm gonna need like 50 of them in 3 or 4 or
Yeah.
5 years.
And to keep
So
that
just I'm not
that
gonna do that gene. I'm gonna do
yeah.
that trait.
Yeah, especially with the lime bread stuff, to keep that quality of lemon ghost, you need a substantial more amount than just
Yeah,
having recessive stuff too, as well.
I'm lucky to have a little like pretty legit red stuff, like just some
Mhm.
extreme purple line stuff that I got. Well, I got one animal from Dan, but it was one of
Mhm.
his like holdbacks, and it ended up being het snow, and it's an albino conda, so it has like every gene I would want to kind of work
Nice.
with extreme red stuff.
Yeah.
So while it's not going to be like a legit pure blood whatever, I feel like I can hopefully harvest enough of those like polygenic genes from that male in other like red and purple females that I just,
Mhm.
how you just randomly hatch out females that are like more purpley or
Yeah. Yep.
burgundy or maroon. And you're like, this is noticeably different, noticeably pretty. No, definitely not a project some dude line bred for 20 years. It's not that.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
that snake has genes in it that are probably going to go well with the other like legit purple and red line stuff. And
Mhm.
on a very slow, a very slow scale, just because I have one, I can slowly through generations kind of selectively breed, and it's not going to be a special line, but it boils down to like, do you want the snake with the pedigree because you're really, hell bent on this like either like locality or pure line thing, or are you attracted to like how it physically looks? And
Yeah.
that's something I kind of got from the Bullsnakes, because the Kingsville Reds are kind of like how purple lines and extreme reds are. Like people will just label it that because it's red. Oh, it's red. It must be a Kingsville Red. And that's like a locality thing. Seems like super overused. Maybe half of them are accurate, but it doesn't change the fact that the reason most people are interested in it is because it's a pretty red snake.
Mhm.
So it's like, dude, I have reds. They're red. They're really, dude. This one red right here is like, whew. Oh yeah, can you see this dude? Oh, it's
Oh
all
yeah.
blown out from the light.
But yeah. Okay, there we go. Now it's settling.
Um, but uh, it's not. I don't know. It's not like Kingsville red. It's just like a pretty red snake that looks
Mhm.
awesome. If you see it on the table, you're gonna be like, yeah, that looks like one of the one. Yeah, it's a generic red.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you can be kind of vocal that you're saying like, I'm using these colors to describe the snake. It's not a pedigree. It's not a line. But I still think the snake has value because it's pretty.
Yeah.
I've labeled it that for that reason, like
And
it's a red snake.
just being able to produce to grab that one animal that looks a little more red, or so we're talking about reds right now, and maybe put it into another animal, just for the benefit of creating a better animal, why not, right? And not just saying, oh, I'm gonna start a line. I just want my animals to look this type of way.
Yeah. And
So
I think that's cool to do as long as like, but on the other end, it's like I don't think it's something's like theoretically, if it's like a 25%
mhm,
extreme red or 12%, it's like because the grandparent was, and then it was like outcrossed twice.
mhm,
It's like like I don't know who makes some rules on this. Like the people that named all this crap before half of us were even in this,
yeah,
and then the other people that make the rules, I guess, are who the most vocal or whatever on the internet or the biggest breeders. But you know, personally, I just describe it as it's a red snake.
yeah. So,
It's a
so we
red.
got we got a question, Harrison Hogs. They want our opinions of the red jeans and hog nose. Um, and this is a rabbit hole we can go down, and a very
And I really don't know, honestly.
yeah. So
But
like,
you probably know more than me. Please enlighten me.
I mean, I would say the red jeans and hog nose, they're all line bred traits, right? There's no, I would say, no recessive. They're all line bred
Yeah.
traits, and from what I can pull off the top of my head, we have extreme reds. Purple line is the same thing, right? It's a redder gene, line bred trait. Um, what's the
Raging red,
raging reds, right? And I
color
think
blast.
Color Blast, and I think Color Blast and Extreme Red are just variations of that same line bred trait. I would
Yeah.
say, and then I think for some reason I'm feeling like there's like somebody called something a Phoenix or something like that.
Yeah, if you
Um,
look at Kevin Rhodes's books, his little like books that are this big that are about like the
mhm,
morph combos and stuff, he actually has like several of them.
yeah,
And but it's also, I think, a survival thing where between popularity and maybe marketing or the name, you see the purple line extreme red, but not
mhm,
like, Phoenix Reds or whatever. Maybe the person that worked with them wasn't as successful as of selling them, because I think the purple line extreme red came from Extreme Hogs. And even though I've never bought a snake from that guy, I probably spent like 20 hours looking at the morphs on his website when I was getting into this like 7, 8 years ago.
yeah,
So there is like this thing where it's like, oh, the dude with the red snakes has like the website with all the good info on it, about the morphs and stuff.
mhm,
That, does the Phoenix Red guy have a website like that? I
very
think
true.
there's, or even like a customer base, you know. So I think, just it's a mix of that kind of stuff, marketing and just maybe even just the gene being like better, like some people
Yeah,
like them more,
yeah, yeah,
or
for
they
sure.
seemed more provable.
Yeah, and one of the thing I think with the reds or any polygenic is, um, where I think can get very fishy and very out of context is, like you said, you grab an extreme red, uh, you know, animal, breed it to outcross, and then you grab those animals and outcross it, and then 2, 3, 4 generations, you're still labeling extreme red. And I think that's where I think sometimes things get muddled in, and people are like, "Well,
Yeah.
I got this extreme red because they said it. The person I bought it from said it's extreme red." Same thing as purple line. I tell people it's like I have purple line animals that produce purple line, and then some, a clutch of 10, maybe 5 or 8 are visually, have that higher purple line lineage and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a variation, I
and,
think.
and then
It's
the
not
rest
it's not like a
don't.
0 and 1 kind of thing where like
Correct.
none are red at all and none are very yet red, but
Hmm.
you get enough that it seems drastic. Like
Yeah.
when you take the lightest, least red one, the most red one, the
Yeah.
clutch.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I would say the more dominant lineages of red genes and hognose or red line bred traits is extreme red, and then color blast, which I have, extreme red stuff, and then purple line, which I definitely have purple line, and then what I don't have in my collection from that lineage is the you said it from Scott
Raging
Talk,
red.
raging red, right? Stuff.
So
Um,
here's my opinion on that, because like, well, not even opinion, but my take on it is that I personally, when working with red stuff, I think like most red stuff should also just be albino.
mm,
Like it's a red albino is what I'm
mhm,
primarily interested in. And I
mhm,
don't see like all the Raging Reds are like their wild type reds.
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
So I have trouble comparing them, what
Two
they would look if
albinos.
they were albino, because that's
Yes.
just like my favorite. That's all it is. Like
Yeah.
first time I saw like an extreme red albino super conda, that had like the faded stripe and like the red kind of like bleeding through the
Yep.
side scales. It's just like, well, that's clearly amazing.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
love it. I need to make one of those. Holy crap.
Yeah, man.
Um, so that's just my own definite, perspective of like, I think when I think a lot of red stuff, I think of like, well, it's red albino. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you can make like red sunburst, and I mean, you could make like red exanthics, but because it's removing a lot of that color, I just don't know what
What's
it's
gonna
making
look?
some
Yeah.
making some pigment change, but it's
Yeah.
like how you start removing like color channels in Photoshop or messing with that, like
Hmm.
it once you start deleting information, it's shows up differently, or it's not noticeable at all.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Like, I mean, and you're. I'm seeing now, like, red line lineage, like toffee belly and stuff like that, and you can see the difference. Probably I haven't seen any in, like hypo, yet,
That might
but
be kind of cool.
I think I can definitely see something that working into the like with
Yeah.
hypo and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah, I
you
don't
know,
really think it works great with lavender. I still haven't tested it out enough, but I
yeah.
think the green background animals make the best lavenders, even just like sables,
Mm,
like that
mm-hmm,
kind of like green depth to it. Uh, but then there's some other times like miracle reptiles hatched out those like red lavenders.
mm-hmm,
Like I've had a lot of red lavender babies that just kind of look brown, and they
yeah.
brown out a little more because of the red content is kind of like unlavendering the lavender,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Instead
But
of
then
the
they hatch theirs
blue,
out and they're like screamers, and it's like, oh
yeah.
well, baby red lavenders are cool as shit. I have no idea.
Yeah, and I can see that, like, instead of like the blue hues of the lavender, it goes to the red spectrum where more of a, I would say, like a brick lavender color or something. But yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's experimenting, and the different lineages can create different things, because you know purple line is in a lot of things now. Um,
to a small degree,
yeah,
like anywhere
yeah.
from a teeny bit to like
Mhm.
half or whatever.
Yeah, so I think, and I think, just like, well, Jeff's extreme red lineage stuff, that stuff is so long time line bred that you can tell the difference,
Yeah,
in that stuff. And I think same thing. If I'm not wrong, I'm pretty sure he said it came from purple line animals that he eventually line
are you
bred
talking
into.
about the color blast stuff?
Correct. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I think on somewhere I think when you're really extra vague, it helps not being incorrect. But it's like I think like the first red animals you see him
Yeah.
working with that he's producing and selling are all extreme red and
Hmm.
purple line stuff. And
Hmm.
I have talked to him, he has told and warned me about how the really line bred stuff like that, starts to have larger eyes and bug eyes and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
correct. Hmm.
Especially like a lot of albino stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so I do think, particularly like his red stuff is a combo stemming from working with those as opposed to the other red lines we're talking about. I think
Hmm.
that's fair to say. He can come beat me up if he wants. Wrong.
Yeah. No, but I think that's a good point where, like, yeah, like it's the line breeding thing, back to the lemon ghost stuff like that, right? Like, to do it properly, you have to have such a large collection.
It's
Um,
more than you think.
yeah.
It sounds real fun at the beginning, and then like 3-4 years into it, you're like, feel cursed.
Yeah, I could just imagine, to be able to start doing that stuff. I would say minimum, I would say, to start that project, at least 10 animals, right? To take it off the ground.
I guess, but it's so funny. I'm so reactive. That's why I'm good at this, because it's just always stuff that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Like as opposed to being proactive. But it's like I don't even know how many animals you need for a project, because I'm still just like holding back more. I'm like, I know it starts with 2 though.
Yeah, yeah,
It starts 2, 3, 4.
yeah.
But then if you really just like extrapolate this, really think it out, the quantity of animals is however many that is that you need to make 3 lines of something.
Hmm.
So I guess a minimum would be 6. It would be 3 pairs from totally different breeders or lines and then you would, switch up put that male to the female from the other breeder, or you would keep them together because there's specifically different lines. It's like, here's a red lavender line, here's like a green lavender line, here's whatever. It's something you're not trying to combine, but instead just offer a specific like variety. Like how you can have like condas that are super faded,
Correct. Yeah.
and then some are super bold and pronounced. And you're just like, oh, there's just, I don't know, there's just two types. It's cool. Which one do you want? Which one do you like? That's just the coolness of, it's not a new morph. It's not anything different. It's just like you're experiencing how cool this hobby is. And the fact that like you could get 10,000 different looking snakes out of the same pairing if you just kept putting them together.
Yeah. And condas, you brought up a good point. Conda, the variability, I don't know. I don't have enough breeding to be able to say, okay, yeah, it's, if you get this conda, you could produce more. To me, it's still a crapshoot of like what comes out,
Yeah.
And
things like whether the saddles are bold or faded.
Yeah.
Is either a crapshoot or maybe that's like a kind of polygenic thing layered on top, where, they're condas, but they're also kind of saddled with some other genes that faded out that they keep showing up in next generation of those animals. Like it's like, the coin flip or the dice roll, it's just, they just keep riding along. Because there's stuff where, in a more like concrete example, there are people who like get an albino pop out of a snake where they haven't bred it to an albino in 5 generations, and a poshet hops forward 5 generations without, being not, sent to the next one without fail. And that is actually the craziest part about all this probability stuff with, genetics or breeding or whatever, is that there is no algorithm or calculation or set of instructions to like, oh, my cat's jumping in my recycling right now. There's no like set calculation to like, or algorithm to figure out like what snakes you're going to get or how many eggs or what's going to hatch. It's just like a coin flip. It's like yes or no for this, yes or no. And I'm oversimplifying this mainly because I'm not a scientist and probably don't even understand it right. But it's like head for albino, yes or no. Male or female, yes or no. Is it gonna have bug eyes, yes or no? Is it gonna have like messed up irregular scales, yes or no? Is it gonna get big, yes or no? Is it gonna have a bold personality and eat easily, yes or no? And they have no bearing on the next one. It's not like some grand equation with all these things where you can like figure it out. And that's what's interesting, but also I guess the hardest part is we can't dilute that down to like this hard mathematical science. So we just got to roll with it. So on the same realm of like, maybe you're going to get a couple messed up snakes, but you're going to take care of them and give them good homes. And maybe you're also going to like breed some polygenic thing to a pretty female and get something that looks almost as good as the dad. That'll have carried along a lot of those like genes you're looking for, but then maybe some other times you'll do it. And man, here's some honesty. Like I made that triple hat acid rain clutch. It was an RB pastel Mai Tai that I took to an Xanthic Conda, and I got that from Dan too. So I got a lot of snakes from Dan like between like 2 and 4 years ago. And was like basically still a reliable person to deal with. And it was definitely an RB pastel. You could look at him in the face. You see this dude. It's like this crazy green and yellow Mai Tai. Paired him to this Xanthic, got these triple heads. They look like the most normalist of normal snakes I've ever seen in my life. And I've never worked with a gene. I've never produced them. So I'm like, I don't know. Maybe a couple of them have them. Maybe they all have them. Maybe this is the thing like it's ontogenetic. Is that part of the ontogeny where like it needs to shed 5, 6, 7 times before it gets really crazy. But I thought I would notice from the clutch. But I'm already looking at them like, man, I'm just going to keep like lying to myself at least for a while. And they're like, yeah, man, they're gonna like shut out. They're gonna look cool.
So I'll tell you this.
It
is a good project, good conversation, and we quickly talked about it through message. Was my pairing for that was RB toxic male to a sable female. After at least one shed, I did see the difference in RBE, where I have the green saddles, lighter background, and stuff.
Hell
like that.
Yeah. That's what I'm looking for.
So
that weird depth. It's got all this depth to the color. That's weird, but it's not. None of it's like bold or like striking. It's just like staring into like a cool rock.
Yeah.
that has like all these cool like details into it.
Yep. Yeah. So I definitely have seen they're right now a handful of stuff is going through their second shed already. Because I think I maybe posted like 4 or 5 animals out of that clutch. I think it was like a 16 animal clutch. Because the rest
Nice.
of the stuff, I'm waiting to see what it looks like.
I think
Waiting.
on that stuff, that's kind of fair to do. I put some on Morph Market, but then I got to lower the prices because they're just like after looking at what other stuff's going for it. It's
Mhm.
especially even triple het males are hard to sell
Yeah.
unless
Yeah.
someone really is just believing in the project, which I'm all for. You're not
Mhm.
going to be let down buying that
Produce.
stuff. It's just
No,
that
not at all.
some people just will just refuse to not. They must get the most powerful thing at the time. And
Mhm.
dude, I'm like, man, this just popped in my head, but I guess I buy sticks like I buy computers. Like if you always buy the cutting edge like gaming computer, you're gonna like pay a whole premium on it, right?
Yeah.
You're paying all this extra money just to have it be like kind of the best for a little bit of time. But
Yeah.
you get that one that's like every part in it is a year old or 2 years old, and you're like, dude, I just got the hottest thing 2 years ago for half
Mhm.
price. And I think that's a good mid ground to work with, so you're not super disappointed on the high end, and
Yeah.
you have some like kind of lasting power working with that. You can it's just more middle of the road kind of stuff.
No, I agree, man. And especially when starting off, it's like 90% of my female breeders that are breeding age or that have bred already are hets, not even visuals. Maybe one visual for
Yeah,
another het or so, but they're
because even back
mostly
when we
hets.
started, it was like visual females were
Yeah,
like a huge big investment
yeah,
and risk,
yeah,
because if
yeah.
it doesn't produce like even a visual male at least, like okay, maybe you put it to a couple few females.
Correct,
But
correct.
then females just like not doing great or not a great breeder, then it's a lot of times they cost more too.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and you got to wait the however many years you want to breed it. We had that question earlier too. It's like, what is your average age of the females that you're breeding, male and female, let's say.
Yeah, I think when I was more eager, there's some that are very like readily tell you when they're like 2.5, 2 years old that they're ready
Hmm.
to breed. Like right in the middle of summer, that second year, they're like, dude, you're huge. You're like 300 grams. You're chomping a couple of mice like you want to be paired. Then there's other ones that just seem easier to not, just take care of them, whatever. So 2 years in the past, I wait 3 years now, also mainly because like once you start holding back stuff year after year, I feel like in less and less of a rush. It's
Yeah.
almost like the by me time. I'm like,
You know?
man, I'm like not even ready to breed those females yet. Like I'm just gonna keep feeding them off. I got all this other stuff. So
Yeah.
um, I think you can use some discretion, and you can probably breed them a lot smaller and sooner than other people say. But a lot of it is more dependent on the fitness of the animal, which actually you would have to be a more experienced person to tell anyway.
Hmm.
So there's kind of a trick there. It's like, yeah, you can get away with a lot of stuff, but you can't because you don't know what you're doing. You're trying to take a shortcut.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
like
No, I agree. Yeah. And
so
then
experience
you
goes
have
a
the
long way.
exceptions. Yeah, and then you have the exceptions of those weird animals that are just gonna grow big real fast. You know.
Yeah, I got a Arctic sable female here that I kept because she's just was the biggest one.
Hmm.
She just grows really fast. She's like the size of a 2 or 3 year adult, and she's 1 year old.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna like whatever. I don't care. Like our super Arctic sables are great. I'm gonna make a bunch with her, and they're gonna be like huge.
Yeah.
I don't
Exactly.
know what else to do with that, but there's no way I can get. It's too good of a snake. It's
Yeah.
giant.
Yeah. I have the same thing. I have a Conda het sable female that I was gonna sell, and it started just growing like a weed. Like I having to hold back, same feeding schedule, everything,
Yeah,
and it's double, triple, maybe triple the size of its siblings that I'm holding back. And
I do enjoy the perspective of having this stuff a little longer, and especially when you start bending with it.
hmm.
Because like it's so funny how other people will inform your decisions. There's a handful of holdbacks I have where like it's on the table, it's on the table, it's on the table, it sheds out. I'm like, damn, it looks good. And people are talking
Yeah.
about how pretty it is, but they still won't buy it. I'm
Yep.
like, oh, okay, well, guess what? You can't anymore. I'm keeping it.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
even
Very true.
just certain hets and stuff that are just
Yeah.
like phenomenal looking. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I've done 10 shows and no one's bought it, but every time people are making some comments. So I'm just going to use this to make more snakes that people think are pretty.
Yeah.
They keep commenting on, or even I've just low key noticed while I'm looking at it. It's like, damn, this thing is like looking a lot better than the one that I held back. I'm just going to switch it out and put that other one on the table. Because that's like just the perk of being a reptile breeder. When you produce
Mhm.
your own stuff, sell your own stuff, take care of your own stuff. I think the one thing is like, oh well, the bonus if things aren't flying off the shelves is, I actually can kind of like change my mind a little bit and be like, this one that was on the table, like, it's shaping
Yeah.
up to be one of the best snakes. I'd just be dumb not to keep it. And I got four ones that aren't as special. And it's like they're the same thing. They're just like, it's not a monster. It's not as pretty, or there's some particular thing. Like I have two lavender males. I'm just gonna keep now. I've been looking at the table because I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the lavenders next to it, and these two are like
Hmm.
just crazy looking. I at least need to see what they look like at a year old.
Yeah.
It,
So we got a follow up question. And thanks for doing the super chats, Harrison Hug. Um, can you read on your phone? Does it come up?
I can. I can. I don't know
Yeah.
what you're gonna say, but I can address what he's saying too.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, man. Say.
Yeah, there's it. It kind of goes in line with what I was talking about, having a random purple like
Hmm.
polygenic traits show up in your animals that aren't particularly like a branded line or line bred or have some sort of like history or pedigree. And this guy, he's actually bought a few of these snakes from me that are like really purple that come out in
Yeah.
sable lavender clutches, and they're really pretty. They're noticeably different, but it's just like it's more like it's just like the character of the snake. It's got they're a little more red. It's not a line, but we were talking about how just using the components into to strengthen it. And I sold a Arctic Paz double het sable lab female to Hectic Hogs a few years ago, and he made two sable lavenders, and one of them he like traded or sold to somebody else. And I've seen that snake, but anyway, it's like a what looks like what you would describe as like a purple or extreme red sable
Hmm.
lavender. What you would think one looked like. Like
Hmm.
it's crazy red. It looks like I saw it in person because the guy brought it to a show to like show to people, and I was like, this is blowing my mind because this looks absolutely nothing like the 3 or 4 or 5 I popped out at that time.
Yeah.
So there's something going on in there. I don't. It's a matter of isolating it. I have a few females that are like really purpley looking. I even have a sable female that was like noticeably more purple than like kind of the black and white Arctic sables from that first clutch. So I have ingredients to experiment with, and that's actually what I'm going to do with that extreme red albino conda male. I'm going to take it to all those weird
Mm.
purple things and see if anything pops out that if it's not like special, at least like kind of retains some of that
Some cool
stuff.
color. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm just reading that thing. It is extremely red.
Yeah, and what's also interesting is like you're not jumping the gun to slap like your personal name on on this lineage or something like that, right? Like it's just a really nice animal
Oh,
that
and
popped out
if
of your.
anything, they're like in their Fathom Hogs lineage, if anything,
Okay.
because that's where I got all the parents from. So it's like
Yeah.
so there's one end where like you are like, well, I can't take credit for the vision and kind of lucking out on some stuff that turned out really cool, but I'm going to take credit for bothering to buy pos heads and raise them up and breed them because that's a whole
Yeah.
other level of commitment work that like you actually you got to do it,
Yep.
so I will take credit on that of just having faith and just having tried doing something because I thought it would be fun
Hmm.
and having it work out and end up being like a really good like kind of foundational pillar for the stuff I'm working with because I'm really doubling down on the sable lavender stuff, and it's not like so much as I want to produce a million of them, but I really like sables and I really like lavender. So every project animal combo I have with this, like all the offshoots are just animals that I just really like making,
Yeah.
So having if I can make if once the combos start getting really intense, where I have like super arctic and conda and stuff into it, it's like, all right, well, I made a super arctic conda like lavender,
Hmm.
and then I made a sable lavender, and I made like a conda, or sable conda, like all out of the same, clutch. And I think that's a lot more, I think kind of like wise and just useful to do than when the people get combos where they can just pump out 20 or 30 of the same like hyper morphed out thing. It's like, oh, cool, I just made like 30 super Yetis.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, that's gonna take you a while to sell, dude. But
Yeah.
like when someone's like, yeah, I'll take a sable conda for like 600 or $800, and I'll take that moonstone conda, and then people can drool over the sable lavender on the
Hmm.
table or whatever. And it's like, hey, but it's het for the other thing, or pause het. Like I think that's just like a fun complex to work in. And going back to the super Yeti stuff, because lavender, whether you can eventually breed visual to visual, it's not really reliable to do it now. So I think there's some like staying power in the
Hmm.
fact, like I'm just proving to myself year after year they're hard to produce in quantity. I'll
Yeah.
produce like 2 or 3 a year. Even if I've proved out more females this year that can make them, but none of them hit on them, or I didn't use the right male to make a visual. It was just like the opposite, like a lavender poshet sable to a sable poshet lav, and I prove them out and make double heads, but I don't get, the visuals.
Yeah.
So, I'm working towards that because I think it's just going to be a fun thing to work with when it's like, I don't know, more popular, more like plentiful. People see more in real life. Because I think they look pretty sweet.
No, that's such a great combo. And talking about, we didn't get to this really into detail, but like, if you had to pick your best clutch this year, what was it? And out of that clutch, your best animal.
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, there's two. The one was like that extreme red. I took to a albino conda. She's like kind of, reddish, pretty,
Hmm.
but not a red line. Paired her. They both produced paws had snow, so I have these like purple line lineage, super Yetis, which are pretty awesome that I'm just keeping. Um, and that's just like wow, like the wow factor. If you look at the clutch shots, it's just like really fun looking. It's just this big pile of like red and white soup. But then the other thing, is what there were like a lot of Sable Lab clutches they either didn't prove, or they proved but I didn't get enough eggs, or like they would have, but like a couple of them just like the eggs weren't good, or they ate their eggs, which
Hmm.
is like even more infuriating. But then the female that kept producing, she gave me a 28 egg clutch, you know. So it was enough that I got two visual Sable Lavenders because it's double
Okay.
head to double head. But then all the other stuff, I'm more excited about it that because it's super Arctic to Arctic, double head. And I've been struggling to get super Arctics in a lot of my pairings. Like on my early pairings where it's like Arctic to Arctic, it might not be
Hmm.
enough, or it turns out the snake's not Arctic or anything. But I don't like a 28 egg clutch. It's like you get like 10 or 15, you get like 15 super Arctics. I'm like, oh, this is so satisfying. Like I just want to keep these three female super
Yeah.
Arctic double heads because I just like this is the one I wanted to make whole clutches of anyway. So on some really basic level, I like it for that reason. And then on some cutting edge level, it's also just more of, two more of the like craziest animals I've ever produced.
Hmm.
And I probably do need to sell one of them, but they're keeping females. So I have three females. I'd love to have a male. Um, but I'm at least keeping one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because like you say super arctics. That's one elusive combo I have not been able to produce. It,
It's so
it, it's
weird.
it's like either I didn't get enough eggs or like it doesn't make sense to me. But like hopefully again this year I try again.
I had pairings that were messing with my head this year. I had two or three this
Yeah.
year where like I was almost sure the snakes were Arctics because I paired them to other things and got
Hmm.
Arctics, and it would be like a 18 egg clutch, and there's no super Arctics. And then it's like, well, which one of these isn't super Arctic? Because I can't even tell because they look both so
Yeah.
so Arctic.
Yeah.
And luckily, it's like stuff that's kind of inconsequential.
Hmm.
It's not going to screw up anyone's projects, but it's more just like, okay, I'm going to put a little asterisk next to this. And a lot of that, honestly, one thing I've learned, I think this is good advice. I thought over time I would get like really good at telling stuff. Like I'd just be like the Morphs master. I can read like this has this in it. And I've just realized not only have I gotten not better at that, but I think I'm actually think it's kind of like not boring, but it's so tricky. I just don't like have I'm not I don't rely on my own like I just want to know what it is. So I'm
Hmm.
moving towards like, man, the more super Arctic hets or visuals I can save up, those will be the things that replace like my Arctics that I,
Yeah. Yeah.
sell off and stuff. just for my own sanity, like I can take the hit to my ego that like I can't tell what the hell I'm looking at, but I can also give myself credit for having the wisdom to do pairings that make my life a lot easier.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's back to where genetics is like, that's one of the, I think, first shed testing that needs to come out is Arctic. Uh,
Yeah, hell yeah.
because man,
Yep.
how much headaches would we save if we can just, all right, let me go send this sheds out. Is it Arctic or not? And then maybe we'll be able to produce more super Arctics too as well, right? Because I think I'm in that same situation where like, all right, I think this is Arctic. It was sold as Arctic. Now let's see if it happens. Or it wasn't sold as Arctic, and I'm
Or you
thinking I'm
hatched
getting,
it and you were sure it was Arctic,
yeah,
right?
yeah, or like or I think I have Arctic in this. So now let me put another. I don't have a super Arctic that makes sense. So let me put an Arctic to it to see if I get supers and I can prove out that last year's babies are Arctic. Like all that whole cycle of that it's mind boggling.
It's a lot less like of a sure thing than you
Yeah,
assume, like than I
yeah,
assumed. Like
yeah.
it seemed not misleading, uh, but it just is just curious how um it seems you can have luck in other realms with the morphs before you have luck
Hmm.
luck with that. Like you'll hit on
Hmm.
a bunch of pos heads, but you'll like put two Arctics together just to make super Arctics, and you're like, dude, what the hell? Like why, dude?
What
Why
happened
doesn't
here?
this work? But
Yeah,
like never had that problem with super condas, you know?
yeah, 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 man. Yeah, same. Yeah, same thing. It's I think that's another beauty about what we do is having that surprise as well, and keeping that. If it was easy, right? If we can just go, okay, this is 100% Arctic and Arctic, and let's put it together and stuff like that,
It would be more
uh,
boring.
it
It
would be
would
more
like
fun.
you need a little bit of that challenge and a little bit of that
Yes. Yeah.
unknown. And the more I've said I've said this before, but like it like a lot of people want to like be able to just crunch everything like how to be a successful snake breeder like into a book, like it's a recipe. And I've said like this, it's not that you could, but as soon as someone was able to do that, this whole hobby would kind of be over.
Hmm.
Because once you like kind of get something like so min maxed and hyper optimized and only doing it one way like that, that only leaves room for like the equivalent like of a Walmart to follow through with that,
Yeah.
product
Yeah.
creation or whatever. Like if it's like, and then when your competition is a thing like a monolith, there is no competing against it. It's so like I think a lot of people, what people kind of wish they had in this hobby with certain things would actually fast track taking all the fun out of it,
Hmm.
on some level. Um, so I don't know, maybe it's like some be careful what you wish for. I
Yeah.
personally, well, I think part of it is just being like I'm like the middle of five kids, so I just like always have to do whatever no one else wants to do because they're always like fighting over the toys or hobbies or activities
Yeah.
and stuff. It's like I just want to like do a thing and like have it be like kind of interesting, like people are into it, but like I don't, you know, it. I think I was having a better time in this hobby like before, COVID. Even though I didn't get in that early, I got in a little
Hmm.
earlier, but um, there there's a lot of good things about this hobby getting bigger and
Hmm.
more popular, but with the good is going to come a little more bad,
100%. 100%.
and everything, like a lot of things just generally kind of get more annoying to participate in once they hit some peak level of
Hmm.
popularity. And I thought one thing that Reptiles had going for them is like it's never going to be so cool that everyone loves them because snakes were always the thing people hated. That's kind of why I like they're cool. They're like the underdog. It's like I'll love you, little
Yeah.
snake, even though everyone else hates you. Um,
Yeah.
so there's part of that where I think there's a good balance, where it's the most fun relies when there's some level of obscurity where some people still turn your heads. Like as soon as someone like you tell someone a stranger you're a snake breeder and like, oh yeah, I know about that. I like watch it on YouTube. I've never owned a reptile and blah blah blah. I know everything about like your whole
Yeah.
little hobby.
You
Like
you know
that's
what's
like less fun than like when you're just like the one weirdo and you meet with the other weirdos.
what's interesting though, like where before when I first started and I would be like, do I really want to tell people I want to, that I breed snakes and this and that? Because either, you get that, oh my God, why would you do that?
You just don't want the hate.
Yeah, exactly. But within the last 2 years, especially last year, within this year, a lot of people are interested, and that peak, that like that curiosity you can see in their eyes, like, oh yeah, and how do you do this and this and that? I
Yeah.
love it because then I can nerd out,
Yeah.
and talk.
And you're right, because there is a lot of cool things about it being more welcome and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, it's just that, like, then you're just always gonna have more people that don't know. Like, do you ever notice like an increase of people that don't have any reptiles at reptile shows?
Yes.
And they're kind of like, oh, I've never even seen one of these in real life. And like, while on one end that's good, like we need people like that. But the thing I'm always yearning for is like, can I at least like 1 out of every 10 people that come by my table be a guy that owns snakes, or a person, that
Hmm.
owns snakes, that I can have a like, I'm not having the same conversation over and over again. Like, no, they don't play all the dead all the time. Here's an adult female right here.
I
Here's
get
an
it. Yeah.
adult male. This is how big they get. Um, like, I understand that, but I feel like I'll greet her at Walmart instead of like some guy who's like hyper passionate about this thing, who's like
Yes.
devoted like all, not energy, but also like intellect to something.
Yes.
And while for a while I thought I was getting burnt out on this, but there's actually a difference between being burnt out and just getting bored. I'm like, dude, I'm like really getting bored, like answering the same
Hmm.
question over and over and over again. I need, like, please, one like random old guy come up to me and tell me about how he bred bullsnakes in the '80s. And I'm like, oh yeah, this hobby's great. Like, oh, that's why I like this. And
Yeah.
he doesn't need
Yeah.
to buy anything. You just look at him and talk, and then, I'm just like, oh, that just like reinvigorated me, because I got to like, I realized there are more people in this hobby than just people that found out about it on the internet in the past 2 years.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
those people are welcome. We need those people, because they're going to like raise the quality and
Hmm.
care and like, like rights and stuff of, like laws, and, we're going to have a bigger community and stuff. But I guess the more time goes by, the more I appreciate the people who were all around before that, because
Yes.
they have a lot to offer that they're not going to make TikTok videos about and share, because it's like some 70-year-old dude who has like a turtle farm or something, who like doesn't
Hmm.
let people on his property, or like even let people take pictures of it. And that's the guy you need to connect with at the reptile show, who's going to like just tell you all this like really interesting out of the box things, that's at least going to like confirm some of the practices you have, and also like challenge some of the things you're doing,
Yeah.
on a more scientific, less like popular level, like just because, that's what everyone's saying you should do now.
Yeah. Because not everything needs to be optimized or taken evolved, right? Like there's some things that are just root based and it works, and it might be the best practice,
Yeah.
you
And I
know.
think if you're going to be like, I think, there's business. If you want to be like a totally cold, calculating, emotionless
Hmm.
business, whatever, that's one thing. But if you just care about this and you're really passionate, it can only be messy.
Hmm.
Like, it has to be messy. It's not going to be this like perfectly like fit together business that
Yeah.
adds up all the time. It's messy because you care about it, and your like feelings are invested in it. Like your ethics and your like what you believe in is invested
Hmm.
in it. And it's not the thing you believe in. It's just like, I can utilize this to maximize my gain.
Yeah.
Because then if you think that way, you have to start making all the compromises that the party that cares about it, like
Yeah.
doesn't want to make.
You bring up a really good point. So last year, because I'm doing this as a business now, and last year I go, okay, let me see how I can look at the business side and make it successful. So I'm not a statistic, or I'm not, you know, 2 years from now, making that unfortunate post on social media. I need to get rid of all my animals or whatever. So I got on an online course, and I think I did it for maybe like 2 or 3 weeks. It was like a weekly meeting, there was courses and stuff like that. And then they started talking about scaling a business. Um, and when it got there and they started talking about, okay, to scale a business, you need to remove yourself from it. And I go, that's not possible.
Man,
I,
that's really relieving to hear you say, because it's like, if you just follow good business sense, it's like they can get you to do anything, which
Mm-hmm.
means going back on every, like, you have to decide. That's just a decision. It's like, if,
Correct.
and then if you're going to be like that, why aren't you just doing something like more less soulless? Like, why
Correct.
don't you just
Yeah.
work on Wall Street or sell like investment products or
Mm-hmm.
health insurance or something?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's, yeah, that's really nice. It's really refreshing to hear other people hear
Yeah.
that. That
So
you're like, you're finding about what it takes to do a
yeah.
business, and you're noticing all these things you have to do are taking away pieces that
Yeah.
you love of it in order to
Yeah.
make it work, and realizing that might not be worth it. Like, it might be more worth it to kind of do it how you want,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe it's less profitable, or you have to supplement it with something.
Mm-hmm.
And on a side note to that, like, I feel like there's kind of a lot where it's like, people ask me if I do this for a living, and it's like, yes, I do, but I don't have a family, dude. Like, I don't have any kids. I'm not married.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so saying you do this for a living, like, that's such a loaded question that could mean so many other things. So I feel like just particularly lucky from this, like, kind of angle of kind of having a lean business, that I can kind of keep my costs low and don't need like as much income to like survive.
Mm-hmm.
It's like kind of a privilege where I can just be like, I can be more principled. I can say I'm making these like choices to like never wholesale, or, do other like things because it's just I'm able to. But then I think if I were in the situation where I had a kid or something, my goals, my like structure of how I do the business, it's like, oh shit, I actually like need to do the business school and like do half the things I don't want to do because
Yeah.
I just won't be able to do it at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's interesting because you can't write a book on how to do this because everyone's
No.
like everyone's story is like a different thing.
Yeah. It is. It is.
Like,
And
I
like you
need to
said,
make.
like that's when they talked about removing myself from the day to day and stuff like that. I go, that's not what I'm looking to do.
You're at that
Um.
point, you're just reduced to, you could be like a dude doing that in an office for any company in America, and it
And
wouldn't even be different looking.
yeah, and that's where I was in that point before that point, and that's where I was getting away from.
I think you
You
need to
know,
like grow a business, sell it to somebody, and then you like manage it.
yeah,
Like, you're like the guy in there, then they
yeah,
just pay you to do it, and the guy that bought it from you is like your friend.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like, this
man,
is how you
yeah,
do it.
yeah. So like, and I tell people like all the time with animals, right, living things, it's it's a never ending job if you're doing it as a job, as a business every day. It's never ending.
It's like the
Because
mail; it never ends. It's like
yeah,
every weekend you're like, oh man, I cleaned and watered and fed everything, and oh
yeah,
shit, I gotta
yeah,
I gotta do that again.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh.
I just
You know
keep
what I
going
tell
and
people is
going.
like I haven't woke up one day from and it's 2 years now that I'm just doing this one day and then luckily like I said I have a family so I'm doing this but I also have my family I take care of so it's a mixture of things but when I'm the days that I'm here the hours that I'm here in this room not one day have I said God damn it I gotta go wake up today and go clean you know, snake poop or water and stuff like that. It's like, all right, I
Yeah,
gotta go do it because these are animals that I really enjoy, working with, and I just got to do it as part of the
I've
process.
I have plenty. I have plenty of days throughout the years where I've totally dreaded doing this and put it off.
Hmm.
But that, for me personally, something I learned about myself is because I just like have some flavor of ADD my whole life that tries to like sabotage stuff. So if I get overwhelmed or stressed about stuff, my
Yeah,
brain will start trying to tell me like, it'll just be easier if you give up. You really don't want to do this. Like, if you quit,
yeah,
it'll be easier. That'll solve the problem. Clearly, you can't take care of it. And then after like you have like 4 or 5 hobbies that you burn out on, you realize, oh, that voice is just like kind of fake. That's just like a voice that's trying to like solve this problem because you're not like just generally functional enough
hmm,
person. Like, you don't have that like that functionality to like, just not be paralyzed half the time to get started. That's
yeah,
like a common ADD thing. It's just like, oh man, the more crap I know I have to do, like, the harder it is to like even
yeah,
like, oh god, I'm dreading this. But that is having just the different brain chemistry or functioning brain that I have to like proceed as such. I just know my brain's going to be like a dick to me and try to convince me that I don't like to do this. But the truth is I do. It's just that like that's just some weird,
Yeah.
latent effect for and then I do the stuff and I feel fine. So while there is that like, do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I think it's also like can be just helpful to say that just because there's times where you're totally like, dreading doing stuff
Hmm.
doesn't mean it's always going to be like that. It doesn't mean you always feel like that.
Yes.
And you don't have to be like so neurotic and like attribute everything to like the meaning of your life and like what you're meant to do. It's like maybe you're just like had a week where you were just in a shitty mood and didn't care about anything. And that's
Hmm.
why you didn't want to do it or didn't want to like deal with customers or whatever. Um, but as a generally like moody person, I feel like it always just turns around. And I know this is deep down, this is what I want to do. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Um,
Yeah.
and a
And you
lot
know
of it
what?
is,
And
yeah,
I think that's why like brumation is such a like blessing in disguise with having, like I didn't choose hognose because I can brumate them. I choose hognose because it was a cool animal, cool
yeah,
morphs and stuff like that. But like those 2 months that I have a reduced amount of animals I'm taking care of, it's a good reset of okay, now back, when they come out of formation, back to hitting the ground running again, right?
yeah.
So I always tell people that's another point I give to having hog nose. It's you get that slow time during the year, and you can kick those, either those projects around the house or do something within that you
Make
have
some
been putting
upgrades.
off, yeah, that you've been putting off because you're so busy with your animals. Yeah, man.
And it's another reason to just do brumation too. Another argument just for doing it. It just
Mm-hmm.
real builds in a little break in your life. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
man.
it's nice to have a break, and if you're not just going in week into week into week and doing the same thing, you gotta give yourself a chance.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
you're not like inputting any new info or doing anything out, if you're like forcing the burnout, I think that's how there. I saw some really interesting graph or chart about how like that maybe burning out is an actual like mental health term, but it's like you're basically sacrificing more and more parts of your life that are not related to the thing you're burnt out on to give you
Hmm.
more time and energy to burn yourself out on the thing that you
Yeah.
like don't have enough time and energy for. So like not only are you like kind of tired of doing the thing because you're just filling so much of your time and awareness and energy with it, but you're also not getting any of the other variety spice of life stuff like leaving the house and going on hikes or
Hmm.
going just doing stuff, hanging out with friends, seeing family. So it's like it's a two ways it cuts, and that's pretty useful thing that I guess to think about sometimes. It's like, man, sometimes you really do just need to go on a hike, even if you're really busy, because it'll at least just get you out of your head and like you'll be a little more excited to get back and
Hmm.
work on tubs or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, man. And then those days that you feel like you're motivated, those are the days you try to knock out as much as you can. Like, all
Yeah,
right,
you're almost
today I'm
working
in.
too fast.
Yeah, yeah. Like today
Have
I'm
you
in
had
it.
that problem yet? I've had
Yeah.
problems where like, all right, I spent like an hour like just like sweating, stressing about doing this, and it's like this. I just did this twice as fast as I thought I would,
Yeah.
and that's for
Yeah.
another thing I've rediscovered, like just really extreme music or like really fast. Sometimes you just
Mm-hmm.
like play some super fast, loud music, and you're like, oh damn, I'm really working 3 times faster right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes you just gotta hit the right thing, and you're like, all right, let's just rock,
Yeah.
especially on certain tasks, where you're just, I don't know if you switch entire tubs for stuff, but like on a lot of the babies where you're just switching tub, you're like,
Yep.
all right, man, I'm like flying through this, like changing gloves for spot cleaning or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you got through it in like one heavy metal album that's like 30 minutes long or whatever.
Yeah. It's just getting in that zone and doing it, right? Like, yeah, that I
Finding
think.
the right wave where you're like,
Mhm.
yeah, and I know that's the thing about me too, where I'm like, this is the opposite of discipline. Like discipline is like you do shit even when you don't want to do it. But I always like have to be in the mood to do whatever I need to do. So I'm just like trying to find a thing to access the mood. It's like, oh God, I really don't want to do this, but okay, I'll drink some coffee and I'll put this audiobook on. No, no, the audiobook's not tickling me. Okay, I'll put this album on. Okay, yeah, now I'm doing it. All right, now I'm activated. I
Yeah.
found the right things to trick me into being excited, like, just time to rock. And that's just my dumb way of, you know, having ADD and still like getting off the couch.
No, and recognizing and being able to do it is a big part of it. When okay, I need to have these parameters to get into that to get there, is important, because if not, then and that's another thing too. Like, if let's say we were producing these cups, right? You can go shelf that cup and forget about it for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
right? Um, we're working with live animals, so if we forget about it, or we get into that mindset of pushing it off, at the end of the day, the animal is going to suffer. And you love your animals, I love my animals and stuff like that. And it's like I don't want it to get to that point. Even if I do
Yeah.
have that one off day, the next day you're like, okay, now I need to get into it, because my animal's going to start having is going to suffer at that point, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a realistic point too to point out, is that you can be trying your best, but still be behind on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
as long as you made the commitment, especially parts, if you have I feel like if you have a good like work structure, like the way you have everything, and it like, like I might have not made to take an extra couple days to get to those tubs, but when I clean them, they'll have like a fresh new sanitized
Yeah.
tub with like fresh
Yeah.
bedding. They have a fresh new deli cup.
Yeah.
So on one level of measurement, they're getting a new, fresh water every week. Will for always be cleaner and better. Maybe that's over 8 or 10 days or something, but that water will always be cleaner than the person that has the pet snake with the ceramic bowl that they only top off, or they maybe wash it with soap and water every once in a while. So there are like, I don't know, ways to rationalize and ways to like balance out these
Mm-hmm.
types of things. Like, I have a hyper clean system that provides like fresh bedding and water at the expense of sometimes you got to go a couple days late, but that's exactly why you designed it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if your yearlings and 2-year-olds have a 12-ounce cup of like water that never gets fouled up, you can deal with it going like 7, 8 days or whatever. And you're just like, okay, as long as they didn't poop in it, it's probably fine. But then when
Mm-hmm.
you have a setup where they're like always knocking the water over, and like 1, 2 days over, it's turned into a swamp and they poop in it, and you don't clean that till a week later, and that happens every week. That's when problems start building up. You'll have
Yes.
like snakes, they get like blisters on their stomachs,
Mm-hmm.
or there's just overall it just gets like nasty and gross,
Yeah.
and you're like, well, on top of it spilling water, and only got to drink that clean water for like a day or two. So you have this, like, if you have the more reliable systems you have, the more you can kind of rest assured that when things are backed up and you get to it,
Mm-hmm.
you're still gonna generally be, good with everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
life.
think that's realistic.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No. And life happens, right? And
I think that's
Trinity.
something I want to be realistic about, because
Yeah.
a lot of people, I think, they either have the intention or they just start exaggerating or even just lying to themselves about how good or frequent care they take. And I'd rather have adequate, reliable care than go above and beyond and then have it be really messed up like half the time, because I'm basically trying to do too much.
Yeah. And Trinity has life happens. Trinity brought a good point. Getting sick, right? You don't plan for it to happen. It just
Yeah.
happens sometimes, right? And it could be common cold or something more serious, right? And I think what we talked about earlier, those process that you have, the sanitation, and then the quantity also too is very important too. Where
You want to build in some room for error,
mm-hmm,
because humans make errors. It's not
mm-hmm,
like, it's just like, dude, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna drop the ball eventually at some point between
mm-hmm,
now and 10 years. Like,
yeah,
there isn't something that's gonna happen in your life where stuff gets further than you ever wanted it because you weren't able to get to it.
mm-hmm,
So if you have give yourself some padding, give yourself some room for a couple of mistakes, and then you can actually bounce back from it, instead of when you're like hyper maxed, to the gills, and it's
yeah.
like everything's all packed together, and then you start to have problems, and it just starts all piling up.
Yeah, yeah, man. We're getting to the 2.5 hour mark, man.
I don't know how long are these supposed to be. I figure like 2 hours.
2 hours. And I mentioned to you, we can go a lot longer, but that's why I plan for part twos when most of my first time guests, because
Oh, word.
we can go into other stuff that we didn't cover tonight. With before we close out tonight, anything that you want to bring up, any last topic, anything that's going on with your world, any projects that you want to get out there.
Oh man, I think I've said enough. I think we really have covered a lot of stuff without starting some whole new other thing.
No, I
Um,
hear that. I hear that,
yeah,
man. But
yeah, I don't know. Just like enjoy your snakes, and I think that use your own visceral reaction to your animals to guide you on what to do with them. Like use your own, like if you have a gut reaction because you saw like, albino hognose and you're like, that is the coolest snake ever, or a leucistic hognose or something. Don't start wondering. It's like, oh, well, what's the best one to buy that will like, I will get a return on my money or will be like the smartest. When people ask me like, what should I breed to this snake? And I'm like, dude, like, you don't know? Like you don't like, don't you have dreams? Like, what are you
that's
fantasizing about? Like follow whether it's like you're doing a business or just your own personal hobby, like just this is the one thing you get to be emotional about.
hmm
Like the one that gives you an emotional reaction, you're like, yes, that's the one. That just I can't stop thinking about. I'm all like messed
yeah,
up in the head at
yeah,
how like
yeah,
cool it was. Don't like buy a different one because someone told you is like a smarter buy because of the breeding potential or something. Like
no,
you will be like way less disappointed if you go with your gut and you're like, just your own personal like of the thing. So that's all I want to say. Because if people did that, my job would be a lot easier. I'd be
hmm
like, yes, you think that's pretty. Don't you want to buy it? Okay, there you go. It's like I can't give you like a business seminar on how to be
yeah,
successful because I don't even know how to do that for myself. I'm just like, keeping along.
yeah.
So
No, I agree, man. And I think talking about like we talked a little about the businesses. Like, yes, if you're gonna do this as a business, you need to have some kind of business structure so you're
yes.
not closing your doors and having to sell off your animals in the next year or two. But then, you know, passion and the care to the want to care for these animals is another 50% part of that.
And that's
Um,
what's going to keep you continuing to do it. That's going to be the
mm,
thing that if you don't have that, you're just going to
yeah.
bail when money isn't as easy as you thought it was,
hmm
or the system didn't work as
hmm
reliable as you had hoped.
hmm Yeah, man. So before we close out, where can people find you? What's the best way to get a hold of you and see some of your snakes?
Okay. I do Instagram. I have like a fake Facebook. You will find me on there. It's just to like lurk and like read stuff occasionally. But I'm almost never on it. I'm on Morph Market and Instagram. I have a YouTube channel where I'm probably gonna make like one video a year because I'm very unproductive. But there, right now, I have a hatchling setup video on there that people seem to be very satisfied with. And if I ever get around to making a lot more, just these basic things where, now that you have a snake, here's what it's like for a snake to shed. Like, you had
hmm
customers yet? It's like their first snake, and they're like, its eyes are getting cloudy. Is that okay? And then I'll like explain this is what snake shedding is,
Yeah.
or like remember just because you put a water bowl in your snake's tub doesn't mean you shouldn't dunk its head in the water every once in a while just to like make sure it's actually drinking. On the third thing, like your snake's not going to eat pinkies its whole life. You're actually going to have to like increase the peach fuzzies and fuzzies. You should be eating like maybe hoppers when it's a year and some change. Go through these things because the setup guide, step one, has gotten people to set them up and they're eating
hmm
and they're happy with them and it's informative. But then you get other people, it's like, well, I'm so clearly your first snake because you're asking me like if it's okay if it's shedding and if you need to increase the food size. So there's like a serious gap, like where the ball's getting dropped. And that's just for a select amount of my customers. Other people won't need this. But
Correct.
just videos like that, and none other just like snake room tips and crap, like just the stuff that's just satisfying to tell people because it saves time. It's like, hey, I figured this out. It totally sucked. Don't do it this way. Do it this way.
I hear
So
that.
yeah, that's where you can see me eventually if I make the content.
Little by little, man. I started when I started the YouTube. I think I did maybe like 2 or 3 videos the first year, and then dropped off.
Yeah,
And then last year that was one of like my New Year's resolutions. Get
yeah. I
back
have a
on it and
lot
stay
of
consistent. So
after looking into what it takes to do a podcast, it's a whole lot. I have a whole lot of respect for people that just do that every week because half the time it's like, dude, I'm just like trying to take care of my animals,
yeah,
sell
yeah,
them. Like,
yeah,
dude, I have to like make
yeah.
things. So yeah, it is. It's a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, that's why I only do 2 a month. Only 2 a month because
I started with writing scripts though. I felt like that was a good
okay.
thing because I can just like you
Yeah.
hearing me talk, I just put it on a paper, So I have all these pages and pages. So as soon as I get around to like setting the camera up, and I can just read them and find the little props I need to
Mhm.
explain stuff. But that was a way of tricking myself into getting the ball rolling. It's like okay, I got the bones written down, I got the meat.
Okay.
Then it's like just gotta wait till brumation, to like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
rapid fire do like 10 videos in a row.
Yeah. Yeah. So Instagram, to
Morph
see
markets.
Morph Market, see your snakes, stuff like that, and then YouTube. We're gonna see more
Yeah,
videos from
there's our
on
video
YouTube.
on there. I mean, I
Yeah,
reckon check it out. Yeah.
yeah. Check it out. Guys, again, thank you everybody that stopped by tonight, shared their thoughts, asked questions. Thank you for the support as usual. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and then also if you guys want to go back and listen to on a audio platform only, it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all that stuff. And we'll see you guys on the next one. So have a good night, everybody, and enjoy your families this